All right, boom. Two Planker Podcast. We're here with Pete Arneson, and this is a very special episode. Instead of doing it over Zoom, I was driving through Reno, and Pete's like, well, I live in Reno, so just come over. So we're in Pete's basement studio right now, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming through. Studio is kind of a loose term, but gets the job done.
No, Pete has an incredible house with a view of like a park or something. I don't know. Very lovely spot.
It's a lake pond.
Yeah.
It's our house pond.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll tell you this. This is a special episode just because this is the first in-person interview that's not like in the woods where everyone's hammered.
Nice.
Like we did the in-person Spring Pass episodes last year and then Mammoth.
Well, we can get there.
We can get there. Yeah. I brought him a tall boy Rainier just as a thank you gift. Let's see. I want to start off with, because we're in the podcast studio, I love your podcast, and I told Jason this when I was interviewing him back in January. I think you guys might have the best podcast in skiing right now.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been fun so far. It's definitely been kind of a learning curve. It as you I'm sure know, it's not fun to listen to your own voice and edit it. But it's been cool. We just wanted to do something a little bit different, a little more current event, what's going on, talk about contests and everything, things that we're a part of. And can kind of give a little more perspective on. So yeah, it's been fun though.
Yeah, so it's Good Enough Podcast, and I was DMing the account, whether it was you or Jason, but it's classic sports talk radio. You guys, you guys present the current events and then debate, and I think it's great because I think that just based on the last episode, it seems like you're a little bit more inclined to get fired up about topics, and Jason tries to stay very like even keeled and just like yeah.
That's why Jason's a good head judge, and I was always a good scoring judge. A little more fired up. Very. I back my opinions, whether they're right or wrong. But it's fun, and those guys and I mean Noah, Jason, and I have been doing this since. We met. We've just been debating about skiing and everything else, and so many years people saying stuff like, you guys should have a podcast, because we'll just be sitting around drinking beers and talking, and it just sounds like something that should be recorded. So we decided finally that it's worth trying to record.
Yeah.
But
well, it's not like where it's, I don't know, like the MLB or NFL or something where there's a ton of experts all voicing their opinions. I think you guys are the only people that know this information about skiing. Like you guys are for sure the only ones that know what happens at every event.
Yeah. Well, expert is a loose term. We know a lot.
Yeah.
But or at least we think we do. But yeah, I kind of I attempt to format the podcast similar to like, I don't know if you know Pardon My Take.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I'm a huge sports podcast listener, Pardon My Take and stuff like that. So that sort of structure seemed pretty interesting for skiing.
Yeah. Oh, it's so genius. Yeah. And I've actually, like when I was starting this podcast, like years ago, I need to do an episode about that at some point. But like I thought, how sick would it be to have a studio like PMT has?
Oh yeah,
full of ski memorabilia, and like the guests bring shit in, and then it's on the walls, and like the bomb hole does it. Basically, every podcast does it. Mm-hmm. They do the same decorations, but I always thought it'd be sick for skiing.
Well, and that's the goal with this. We'll see how many people I can get to come through Reno.
Yeah,
but I guess I'm the guest on this, but you're the first person here for this, so.
I'll have to, I'll see if I have anything in the car to donate, because right now
I would love it.
You have a few things on the wall. There's a portrait of a cat.
Yeah, that's Steve. Steve the cat. I bought him at TJ Maxx like 5 years ago when I had a few beers on the lake and went to TJ Maxx afterwards.
Yeah.
Got a big Till Death banner from our wedding that my friend Micah and TJ Gentman got us. And then
that's pretty tight.
Yeah, the hat on the wall that my father-in-law made me. He's a hat maker. Yeah. Look him up, Tahoe Vision. And yeah, that's about it. Got a few little trinkets over here too. Got some, this is to make your own Genepi. So Genepi, the French liqueur.
Yeah.
So shout out to Charlie Royer.
What are these magazines you got right
Knuckle
here?
Mag.
Knuckle Mag.
If you haven't had a chance to look at Knuckle Mag, David Ortlieb, Sammy Ortlieb, out of Switzerland, it is I think
really
the
sick.
best ski content that you can read in paper form right now.
Yeah. Well, if you can read it, because this is not
Google Translate is a thing. Yeah. I've read a lot of the articles, but yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. Remco has some great articles in there. Laura Obermeyer has been a contributor in there as well. Teresa Korobova has been in there writing stuff, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's so funny. You think, at least I think, I know everything that's going on in skiing at this point. And then I turn around and there's like a magazine. There's like 5 volumes of a magazine I've never even heard of sitting right on your desk.
I was thinking that today when I was looking through Instagram. There are a few names that popped up, and I was like, man, how have I never heard of these people at all? And I mean, we were talking about that in the podcast we recorded last night about that. I'm going to blank his first name, but he goes by Tito. Mm-hmm. He's the one that did Jib League.
Yeah, I forget. I think it's Jackson, maybe.
Yeah. I never heard of him before, and then saw him at Jib League. I was like, this kid is really, really good. Yeah. So, I mean, stuff like that's pretty cool. Jib League was fun to go to.
Yeah, I was going to say. So we're in Reno, and this is something I didn't realize until I spent more time out west. I think Reno might be the best location to be based out west. This is such a prime spot. It's got a great airport and super underrated. I think.
I lived here 12 years ago. I lived in Truckee, and it was fun to live here. There was nobody here but the Good Enough guys, though. So it was kind of a obscure time, and that was right when everyone was moving to Salt Lake again. So we moved to Salt Lake, but my family and I moved back here about 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's not too bad. We lived in the Northwest for a long time, and it's nice to get some sunshine.
Yeah, I think if you want to be at the center of the ski world, you got to go to Salt Lake. But this is like the center of the far west. You know, you have such. I mean, Mammoth is right there. Lake Tahoe is right there. You can go Pacific Northwest is right there.
Yep.
It's not bad.
Shit, dude. It's not bad at all. Yeah. I mean, in some days you can get the Mammoth faster and you can get the Palisades. Yeah. Because of traffic. So, I like it here so far.
It's so sick. Yeah, I was just up at Palisades. So to explain to you how I got here, I was, whenever it was, I think a week ago, I was in Palisades for a week with my dad. And it was just like a family trip type of thing. He's lived in Connecticut his whole life, so he wants to do the whole, go to all the classic ski resorts. So then I had a week to kill before I had to be at Mammoth. So I did this big, long, Northern California. I went up to Redwood, went across to the coast, went up to Redwoods, Crater Lake, and back down. So the timing worked out perfect to get here.
Very cool.
But Ryan Barrick, who's been doing the in-person interviews, he was at Jib League, and he said the same thing as you. He said it was so sick. So I'm a little upset I wasn't here a little bit earlier.
It was crazy. I've first of all never seen that many skiers in Tahoe at one event. I wasn't here back in the day when they did Dew Tour or North Star or anything, but to have that big of a gathering, I mean, it seemed like the whole Salt Lake ski community came out for it. Everyone was here, and it was cool to see. I mean, you had kids in Monster and Red Bull helmets that were trying to qualify in to it, and it's a cool event. We've talked about it on our podcast, how I wish, I love the edits. I wish there was more coverage. I wish there was more behind the scenes of what's going on, or even a live production of it, because it's so good for skiing.
And I think it was you saying this in the podcast, but a Drive to Survive for Jib League, or even the U.S. ski team, I would be such a fan of that. And honestly, it's close enough to my field of work that I've almost considered trying to put it together, but it's such a big undertaking that it's a little intimidating to even start.
I've heard some rumors about something like that happening for the U.S. team eventually. Even handed out my business card to people trying to be involved in it at a meet and greet, but I don't know what level. But for Jib League, I mean, that sort of thing, the documentary they did and everything, kind of showing that off. But having something like that for every event to show kind of the behind the scenes, you learn more about each one of these skiers. That's you're much more in touch with it. That's I'm a huge F1 fan. Yeah. And Drive to Survive, I mean, I have way more of a connection with these drivers than I would if I didn't watch that series. I mean, their personalities are in the show.
Well, and that's the same reason why, the NBA, I might mentioned this fact on the podcast before, but it's the most talked about league on Twitter. You know, all the leagues. And NFL's more popular money-wise, viewers-wise by far, but more people talk about the NBA because it has all these stars, and you know their personal lives, and you know all the shit going on off the court that people love, and makes them so into it. So when they see, you know, this person's having all this drama, and then you turn on the game, you're like, yo, that's the guy that's involved with this, that, and the other thing.
Well, and I kind of love that. I mean, it's just turns it into something else, which is entertaining. And you get those stories, let's say, during the Olympics or during some of these bigger events, because they do in-depth things on these people. Yeah. But, I mean, so many of those things are kind of fabricated to a point. I worked for NBC at the Olympics in 2014. And it was so interesting being in a research room where they're just digging and digging and digging and clawing, trying to find something to talk about these people.
Yeah, and that's when you get storylines. Like, I feel like sometimes people will watch an event and be like, why are there so many features about this one person? You know, like, how many Eileen Gu, you know, studio interviews can we have? And it's like, well, sometimes that's the only story that they could actually make a piece on.
But, I mean, Eileen, for example, is such a... She reaches so many audiences that it's like... that.
Makes sense.
I mean, you got to do it. Yeah. You got to bring that one up. And, I mean, stuff that they did with Gus in the past, because he reaches a different audience. Yeah. And it brings more viewership in. Yeah. And so it is pretty interesting. But I love that aspect of the production side, especially working in these events for however many years I've been doing it now. It's fun to see that behind the scenes, and fun to see somebody who's not connected with the sport have these stories and bring them to you and be like, you're close, but not quite. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah. So I don't think we're going to do like a full timeline episode, but we'll bounce around and go into like different areas of your expertise and your career. So tell us about working with NBC. Were you in Connecticut at the NBC Sports headquarters, or did you do something else?
I was actually in Sochi. So I was in the Olympic Village, so the coastal village in Russia. And it was kind of an interesting way it kind of fell into place. I was judging a lot of the Olympic qualifying events that year, 2013, 14, leading into those Olympics, and I was not an Olympic judge. That year, Josh Lubeck was the U.S. representative. And so Steele Spence and I kind of were looking for a reason to be there. First time our sport's in the Olympics, and his wife, Justine Spence, kind of got us linked in with some people at NBC. Steele ended up going up and was working in the village up at the mountain, helping the announcers and whatnot. And then I got put in as an expert researcher. So they brought me in because I had a background in freestyle, and I met the guy, and he listened to me judging before. And so they brought me in as an expert. Yeah. And I spent 12-hour shifts in a research room, and I did not only free skiing, but I did snowboarding, I did ski cross, border cross, moguls, aerials, and
because that's all technically freestyle.
Exactly, which is a whole nother topic, but covered all those, and it was a very cool, interesting experience. Yeah.
So are you like reporting to the producer, and then like what's your kind of like the hierarchy? Who are you in charge of? Who's in charge of you?
So I basically was a resource for anyone who needed it. Announcers, producers. Okay. So I would basically do a write-up about every event, give my picks, explain why, explain formatting, explain all these different things, and that would get sent out to everyone who was covering it. I had a few people stop by that would do interviews with people and come talk to me about different athletes and stuff like that, but that was kind of the gist of it.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool gig.
It was a very cool gig. I was one of, I think, 3 people that were considered experts in their field. There was a world champion figure skater, Kimmy Meisner, was there. And then there was a expert in curling, and everybody else was just journalists, researchers, and that sort of thing. So it was a very fun room, lots of computers just facing each other, and a different world than I'd ever experienced, for sure.
Yeah.
And in Russia, which was interesting.
And you weren't commentating at all. You were just okay. Yeah.
No, hadn't started commentating, still judging at that point.
Yeah.
Just found a way to go to the Olympics
and get involved.
So
yeah.
It was cool.
So sick, dude. That's awesome.
And talk about a unreal mountain to ski. I got to go up one day. So I was there for a month. I brought my stuff because I didn't know what the situation would be. And I got to go up one day. I had someone cover my day shift, and then I covered his night shift and worked a double. So I worked 24 hours straight the next day. And I got to go up, and I went out to some insane club that night up in the mountain village, and then got to ski the next day. Nobody was allowed to ski there but the athletes or coaches. Yeah. And so it snowed like a week before, and there was still untouched snow everywhere. And it was like open face, kind of like, I guess, BC type skiing up top. The middle was like Japan. The bottom was like the Northwest. It was insane. It was such a cool place to ski. Yeah. So it was a fun experience for sure. That's a long next day. But pretty fun.
That's so tight. Yeah. Are you trying to get in on the next Olympic cycle to be there at all in any way?
I would love the opportunity to commentate something like that. Haven't really pushed for anything in that direction. The last 9 years, I've been working a pretty demanding construction job up in the Northwest. And so the announcing gigs were more of mini vacations for me. Yeah. So now that we're relocated down here, I'm a little more open to trying. Actually, I'm a lot more open to trying and find more announcing gigs. So we'll see.
Yeah, because in Connecticut, there's so much TV going on. So in college, I would pick up gigs as a stage manager, and there'd be some analysts and people that I'm helping out that they are doing one commentating gig a month at most. These guys work at banks. These guys I don't think people know that unless it's Stephen A. Smith or Holly Rowe or all these big names that you see at every game. Yeah. A lot of these people have other jobs that they're doing.
For sure. And I mean, the ski industry is tough too, because you look at who we have. I mean, we have Tom Wallish as the main commentator for these events, and we couldn't ask for something better than that. Yeah, I mean, he's perfect. He's amazing, and he's so the way he does it is so great and so fun to listen to, and to have his name attached to it is great. So it's a tough one for someone like me who would love to do more, but you're putting my name up against Tom's. Yeah. But I mean, for example, I was privileged enough to announce Tom's event out in Pennsylvania at the Steel City Showdown, which was cool that he wanted me to come out and do his event because he couldn't do it because he was hosting the event. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to do more. I feel like where we're at right now in skiing, there's not enough independent live production events like there used to be. Yeah. So I would love to do more. But we'll see.
So could you, just for the people that don't know, could you break down kind of the different avenues in which you could work? Because there's the color commentator, there's play-by-play, and that's for the broadcast. And then there's also the venue announcer. Yeah. So there's I would say probably 4 people involved, right?
And I do all of those kind of roles, which is also a battle too. But so there's the venue announcers.
Yeah, and if you could kind of describe.
Yeah, so the venue announcer is the guy you hear at the contest. You hear on the loudspeaker out in the venue. So at X Games, that's what I do. So if you're at X Games and you're in the bottom corral, you hear me calling the tricks with a host and Brad J, and we talk about what's going on around the venue. We're more targeted towards everyone out there and that sort of thing. But we're still doing a show. We still have TVs or big screens out there. We still have cameras on us, and we're doing a show. It's just not recorded and sent out on a stream or on TV. Then the other side of that is then you have your broadcast announcers. You have the host or the play-by-play, which kind of seems backwards in our sport, which has always been kind of an interesting one. I think the first time I sat down to announce, I sat down at play-by-play because they're labeled on the headsets, and they're like, "Nah, you're color." It's like, but I'm play-by-play. I'm saying all the tricks. And but anyway, you have your host, your play-by-play, and then you have your color, who's also like the analyst. Yeah. Tom would be the analyst at X Games, and then Jimmy Coleman would be his host.
Okay.
So it's and yeah, I mean, I do the analyst or color for the Grand Prix, so like the Copper Grand Prix on Outside TV, and then there's another broadcast of that Tom does on NBC.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, so that's basically the breakdown of broadcasting positions. Like, if you're watching a football game, the guy calling the plays, who you basically hear the whole time, is usually an expert that may or not have played, and then they're given like, hey, the advanced this many yards, whatever. Well, and then the color commentator is usually like a player or coach or somebody who's like giving their take on the situation.
What's interesting in like skiing and snowboarding is the person who is calling the tricks and describing the run is technically like the analyst. They do a whole lot more in our sports than in traditional sports. So the guys like Joe Buck, he's calling the game, he's hosting the show, and then I don't know who's with him, Aikman or whoever he has with him, will input on why the quarterback made that throw. Yeah. But there's much more for that play-by-play in traditional sports than in skiing and snowboarding, where in skiing and snowboarding, we're talking about the run, we're describing the tricks, we're calling out the whole thing, where it's kind of flip-flopped in traditional sports.
So weird. Yeah. But I think you do a great job. Like, I think that it's so funny. I was talking about this with Iberg yesterday. Like, when I was growing up, so Johnny Mosley obviously had a really prolific career, but by the time the early 2000s came around, early to mid 2000s, he was doing a lot of narrating for Warren Miller. Yep. So, like, as a kid, when my parents would bring me to the Warren Miller premieres, I knew Johnny Mosley as, like, the narrator for Warren Miller. So, for you, I recognize your voice is so recognizable to me because you're the voice of these events.
It's funny because my first announcing gig was Dew Tour, I think, like 2016 or 17, and I did it with Mike Atkinson, and I remember I immediately checked New Scores just because I was so self-conscious about how I sounded, and because I had never done it. Yeah. I kind of got roped into it because people had heard me call tricks while I was judging, and they're like, "You can do this, just don't swear." I'm like, all right, I'll give it a go. And I had so much, it wasn't really hate, but it was interesting. It was like, Van Valen sounds different this year. Yeah. Luke Van Valen's getting his tricks. And I was like, do I sound like Luke Van Valen? And I don't know if I was just trying to sound like him. Yeah. But I do miss that. We've talked about this before, I think, on our podcast, how New Scores used to be really in tune to the contest. And they even had drinking games on things that we said too much. Yeah. And my first ever one, I kept saying classic. Like, that's classic style from Jossie Wells. And somebody put it in the drinking game, and I read it the night before about... like, I think it was like, do a shot every time Pete says classic. And so I opened the show the next day with like, it's a classic Breckenridge day. And somebody commented, it was like, well played, Pete. But that was fun. It was really, I realized very quickly that announcing was way, way more fun. And nobody really cared if you got it right or not compared to judging. Yeah. And judging takes it out of you. Yeah. I mean, nobody's ever completely happy. Even if you do and try your hardest and do the best job you can, nobody's happy.
Yeah. So just in terms of resume, so people have your background. So how many years of judging did you do? And then how many years of commentating have you done?
So I judged from, I think, like major contests from 2012 to 2018 or 19. And then I've been commentating since, I think, 2016, 17 to now.
So there's some overlap,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the thing that I've worked in like production where we're making something that lives online forever, and I've worked in live TV. I love live TV because all right, you fucked up. Well, we're going to move on anyways.
Yep.
And then it's over and done with. And then once the broadcast is over, unless it's like unless it's a playoff game or something, it's over.
Yep.
No one ever looks back on it. But then, so you've had both sides of being on the mic where you get live, where you're like, oh, I messed that up, whatever. And even better if you're the venue.
Oh, for sure.
The venue announcer. It's like, who cares about it? You can mess up as many times as you want. No one's recording. But then now you have the podcast, where whatever you say lives on.
It's there,
forever.
Yeah. And I think that was definitely a tough thing when we started the podcast. Not only hearing myself talk, because I even had a hard time going back and listening to my announcing, but hearing myself talk and then actually people hearing my opinions on shit has been an interesting transition for sure.
Yeah.
So, because I mean, I give my opinions when I'm announcing, probably more than most. I'll call things kind of a little more how they are. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting spot. But yeah, when it comes to like live venue, I mean, nobody's really listening to us.
You're kind of just like the background noise. Like you're
nobody
just
really
just
cares.
The general hum of the event.
Yeah, especially if it's a bigger event where there are a lot of people there. I mean, it's more of interacting with the crowd, less of us talking about what's actually happening, and only the people who are really in tune with skiing or snowboarding are listening to like our trick calls and stuff like that. So I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's more of just entertaining people and making sure they're looking at the right thing.
That's gonna be such a chill gig. Oh my god,
it's super fun. Yeah, it was a blast this year. I got to host, so I got to be play-by-play or the host for snowboard knuckle huck. So our normal host Brad J, they gave him a break, and then I got to do it with the snowboard analyst Connor Manning. And so we flip-flopped for knuckle huck, so we got to do it, and we were a lot looser than the average live show. It was super fun. So
that's so awesome. What did you think? And it's funny because you never, like, the same way that the judges never want to be the main story for an event, I feel like the commentators don't.
Yeah.
But I feel like Tanner stole the show for
God.
X Games this year. So as a commentator, or
Dew
excuse
Tour.
me, not for X, for Dew Tour, So what did you think of Tanner's performance at Dew Tour?
Well, I loved it. I was really curious who was going to be in that spot. I'd reached out to them and was like, hey, I'm available. And never heard back. And
so, but really quick, so who do you reach out to when you're trying to get these? Are you reaching out to Transition or whoever?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Production company, whoever's handling it. And I've done Dew Tour quite a few times in the past. Okay. I was originally hired on by Boombox, who used to do it. And I work a lot with them through X Games and other things. So I reached out and never heard back. I was like, oh, I'm really interested, and hadn't heard until I think Jason got there, and Jason texted me. He's like, you'll never guess who's announcing. And so I was tuned in, and I was super entertained by it. It was great to hear Tanner back on the mic. He was more stoked than I could have imagined. And not only having Tom do his first play-by-play or host role and having it be with Tanner and their dynamic was so funny, dude. So fun. The back and forth about Tanner calling Tucker Fitzsimons Tuckleberry Finn and Tom not being okay with it was so funny. And I
so good.
I don't mean to put Tom on blast, but I was texting him during it. And I was like, Tuckleberry Finn, huh? And Tom texted me back in the like commercial break. He's like, I hate it. But it was. What
was his problem? I mean, Tucker doesn't like it himself, but like, what was Tom's issue with it?
I think Tom it's a lot. I mean, if you're working in a host role, I mean, you're trying to carry the show.
Yeah.
And Tanner's Tanner, and Tanner's gonna be Tanner, and having Tanner just kind of go off on his little tangents, where it was just hilarious.
It was so good.
Yeah. I was very entertained. I tuned in the whole time.
It was so. Oh my god, it was so funny. I'm just trying to remember like the whole waterfall rail ongoing discussion across all the events.
What was Tanner calling it?
I forget what he was called, but I remember Tom was making fun of him because Tanner didn't like that rail. They were calling it like the pillow line rail or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, yeah.
And then the other thing that I thought was really funny, I don't know if you noticed this, but Tanner was trying to push for the America versus China matchup when it was Eileen versus whoever. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting, but he was like trying to craft a storyline.
Zoe Atkin.
Yeah,
but I guess that's not America. She's from Park City.
She's
skis
UK.
for Great Britain.
Yeah. So I forget who it was, but Tanner was like almost pitching a storyline. He's like, "Oh, this is like a China-USA matchup right now. Like this is kind of a big deal."
Well, yeah, that's the Montana in Tanner, and you gotta. It was cool to see how excited Tanner got about the level of women's half-pipe skiing, though. Okay. I thought that was pretty interesting. Because he's looking at that from his perspective and the runs he did in the past. And we all know what his prowess is and how he dominated the sport for however long. But to see like Eileen's run and to see what she did, it was cool to see his reaction to how good the women's skiing was.
Well, yeah, because if you put Eileen Gu with her current talent in the competitions that he was competing with, she's like eligible to be on the podium.
Oh, she's podium for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
If not winning it because of execution, variety of spins for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, This
is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately because I've been listening to the Giving Flowers and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So bear with me because it's kind of a long analogy. But when back, this is really you're gonna be like, where is this going? So back in the 1800s. Okay, I'm a big history guy. When Lewis and Clark were going across the country, if you saw an animal, you were a major figure in science. You know, you saw a prairie dog, you're the first European to see a prairie dog. You are now a world-renowned biologist for documenting this. So it was a very low barrier of entry to making a big impact. So you look at the early days of skiing, you do a backflip with a mute grab, and all of a sudden you are revolutionary. Yep. And then now today you have to be doing insane shit, death-defying stuff, just to even have a little bit of notoriety.
Well, when I started skiing, it was you want to be good enough to win your local contests and kind of be up in skiing, maybe even get sponsored. It's do a cork 7.
Yeah.
It was pretty minimal barrier to entry to being good at skiing.
Yeah.
And that's early 2000s. And then you look at now and these kids are there's 12-year-old kids doing triples.
Yeah.
And everyone has access to an airbag and stuff. It's a completely different interest than it was, I think, for myself, my generation, and I'm sure you coming up. It's changed dramatically in the last decade.
Yeah. The point where I will give the early guys credit, Tanner's generation and the generation, and just the guys that were, early 20s in the late 90s, and I think Iberg has mentioned this on Giving Flowers. There was no YouTube. If you wanted to learn how to do a trick, you had to be there in person or literally have an action figure and figure out okay, where am I looking in this trick to figure out how to land this. So even though I was just ragging on them for back
for sure.
Mute grab is iconic, they had nobody to show them the way. It was all just completely unexplored territory.
Yep. And even in my early days, New Scores was just starting. I think I joined New Scores in 2003 or something like that.
Crazy, yeah.
And that's everything we had. When we saw it on there, it was first time it happened or whatever, until the movies would come out in the fall, and then you'd watch all that and study all that and try to figure out what to do. But yeah, those first guys, everything was either derived from things they'd seen in other sports like snowboarding, rollerblading, or whatever it was, and just figured it out, I guess, as they went.
Yeah, I forget who had it, but there was the Huck doll.
Oh yeah. You never had a Huck doll?
No, I never had one.
I guess I definitely had a Huck doll.
So I was born in 98.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was 4x9 was huge when I was an early teenager.
Okay.
So that's kind of the timeline we're working on.
Oh, that's a perfect era to have grown up in free skiing though. You got the golden era when you were young. So.
Well, I don't know. A lot of people talk about different golden eras.
There's only one.
Yeah.
There's only one, and it was when Tom and everyone moved to Park City and Salt Lake, that is skiing's golden era.
Like when I got to interview Steve Stepp, I was like, I might quit the podcast after this, because like this is the only person I gave a shit about interviewing.
That's so cool. Yeah, first time I met Steve was when we moved to Salt Lake, and we were at some house party, and we got introduced to each other, and we were both like, we know each other from the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole scene, I mean, it was definitely a reason why I wanted to move out to Salt Lake a little later than that like main time. But yeah, it's kind of what started everyone being there and why people are still there, I guess.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Salt Lake, we don't have to talk about Salt Lake right now, but it just seems exhausting living there. Like, I think being surrounded, Reno's nice. I've been here quite a bit in the past year. It's nice because there's more shit going on than skiing. You know, if you want to tap into skiing, you can. If you want to be disengaged, you can. In Salt Lake, it's like, and I've talked about this before, I know, but it's like there's Mormons and there's skiers, and that's literally the whole city.
There's not enough water. It's too hot in the summer. Like there's not. I don't know. I lived there 1 year. I probably slept 3 nights in my bed in the house that I paid for. My friend John Sussman then took my room because I traveled that whole winter, because that was 2013-14. And every time I came home, I went and stayed up in Park City at Devin Logan's house.
Yeah.
So I didn't get like the Salt Lake experience as much, and then I blew my knee that year, so I moved back home and had knee surgery. So that was like my short-lived Salt Lake, but
very short.
I liked it. I liked it a lot more in Tahoe. I liked it here. We kind of had something fun going with Boreal, but now Park City and Salt Lake have Woodward there, which is kind of what we were hoping our Woodward here would turn into, but it just didn't quite hit the mark.
Yeah. So when you were here, so Boreal was like the resort where you guys were doing good enough, right?
Yep.
Okay. It seems like, I don't know all the members of your crew. I should have done more research. But it seems like you guys are all still very involved and pretty successful within the ski industry
It's kind of funny because like when I moved here, I knew Noah Curry because I came out the summer before, and they did like a summer camp at Boreal.
Yeah.
And I was a digger for that summer camp. My friend Dash Camp brought me down here, and he's like, you got to come down. We'll just get to ski for like 4 days, and we just have to set rails. So I came down, and then after that, we were like, we should probably move there. And then so we ended up moving that fall down here, and I knew Noah and nobody else. And Noah introduced me to Jason, Garrett Jurich, who was our filmer, Cooper Davidson, John Sussman. That was kind of like our group. A couple years after, I guess the next year, Kai Capella moved to, somehow we conned Kai into moving here.
Where was he originally living?
In Park City.
Okay, yeah.
And we conned him into moving to Tahoe, telling him it was like the spot. And poor Kai, it was not the best experience for him. But yeah, it's been interesting how our group has kind of, grown into the ski industry.
Yeah, could you give people like a little stand by me, like, oh, he grew up and went on to do this? And
so I moved here, and that was the first year I was like, I did a judging clinic, and they asked me to start judging major contests. Before that, I just done like local contests. And I met Jason, and I'd never met anyone as critical of skiing besides myself as Jason. And I instantly was like, you should judge. Drug him around to a couple contests that year to like sit in the back. And then he came to WSI up in Whistler with me. And then after that, he's become U.S. mega judge, Jason.
Yeah.
And then Noah Curry, also now a certified judge, judges stuff, but also works for Blue Origin in Seattle as an aerospace engineer.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
So yeah, Noah's story is pretty interesting. Garrett G Money Jurich, he's still here. He works for his dad's construction company out here, still film stuff here and there.
And John, Kai's working for K2.
Yeah. Kai's the obvious one. Kai had an actual ski career, other than us with our mediocrity of ski edits. But yeah, Kai's story. I'm not taking any credit for Kai's success, but I met Kai, knew he was unreal at skiing, and I had a friend who was filming all the Poor Boys movies, Cody Carter, who hit me up asking for somebody who could fly out to Detroit with Carl Fosfet and film handrails. And I told him Kai Capella.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, one of Kai's first little movie segments. But obviously he went on to do much more. And now, Kai is, I don't even know his title. It's like senior marketing manager for K2, but also team manager, but also literally anything else they need him to do. So we've hung on to our ski industry connections.
Kai is probably one of the better rail skiers that has ever existed.
100%.
Like easily top 5.
We were talking about this. I don't know if it was on the podcast or off the podcast, but like our top people that would be really fun in like a slush cup would like Tucker Fitzsimons, Kai Capella, Wallish, Andreas Hotveit.
Oh yeah.
And just rails.
Yeah.
And I mean, Andreas kind of proved it this last week at Unrealistic, but Kai, I would put Kai up against anybody with
him. I would love to see him and Tucker.
Yeah.
That would be, because they have some very similar style.
Yeah. Kai would claim he doesn't ski park anymore, and he likes to say that, even though that's not true. So
it's so funny, like seeing Tom still ride. It seems like, I don't know, like skiing kind of proves muscle memory. It seems like if you see a guy that hasn't skied for years and then comes back, they're all doing the same tricks they've ever done, especially on rails.
For the most part, it's kind of interesting. Some of like your perennial favorites, they come back and they're not quite.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the break. I don't know if it's their body breaking down, but Tom has definitely stood the test of time.
Oh my God. Yeah. Tom, like, I think you guys have talked about this. Like, Tom could still win competitions.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like that Dew Tour street style course. Yeah. Tom would have been a great battle with those guys.
So good.
Like, I don't know if he would have made that podium, but it would have been close.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Man. Yeah. I saw the Andreas Hotveit recent videos, and he's still a phenomenal skier. But something I didn't notice before, and I haven't watched his videos in years, like this is something I was watching when I was a teenager on New Schoolers. He's a little bit more flaily than I remembered. Kind of like really, like you could see how much effort he's putting into.
Did you watch the one that they just put out?
No, I haven't watched it yet. Okay,
you should.
It's pretty composed.
Okay, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does like a back to sniper tap. I watched like 3 times. Like, I don't think that's possible. I don't know how.
And again, like unrealistic is like a competition, so it's like you don't have unlimited attempts to like perfect the trick. So I was like a little slow to.
Well, and I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, some people forget his competition prowess and his slopestyle prowess back in the day. I think he got 4th in 2014 at the Olympics.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, he was that good. And he retired at a point where he definitely could have kept competing. I don't know if I think it was knee related. Yeah. Like a lot of people had knee issues going into that Olympics trying to just compete. But yeah, Andreas, I mean, he's a Viking.
Yeah. Like, it's so sick.
It's insane.
Yeah. I need to get more into the Euro scene. That is like the most common criticism I've got about the podcast. I don't know if I've ever interviewed a European guy.
Oh, you should.
I know. I think Monty Wright, but I don't even know if you would consider English people European. They're kind of their own brand of.
You should get a Norwegian on.
Yeah, I know. I need to get a Scandi person.
Yeah. Have you ever been out there?
I've been to Norway once in the summer.
Okay.
On like a kind of like just solo, like the train around the country. I've never skied out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
The scene is insane. Yeah. That park in Treven and like the history they have there at Ski Oslo is so cool. I mean, you can you go from the city, you get on the subway with your skis, you ride the subway up to the mountain and you're skiing. Like it's so incredible. It's so cool. And the amount of big names that are like constantly riding there still. And yeah, that place is so cool. Yeah. Norway's so cool. I love it there.
Well, so I read this other book. I can't remember what it was, but like if it wasn't titled this, it should have been titled this. It was like the history of skiing. So it was like back. It was all the way. It went way back to like hunting and military and all this stuff. And it is like in America, it's a niche sport. You look at Norway. for example, and it is like it's basically their central identity.
Yep.
And at least speaking from my perspective, I did not know that at all before reading this book, like how ingrained into culture it is. Like, it is not abnormal to be a skier. Like,
and it's normal for like, it was very normal for us to be getting on the subway with our skis.
Yeah, like that
we
was
weren't
not
the only ones.
Heads.
And it was more irregular that we were park skiers or snowboarders going up there. It's like cross country skiers are on there nonstop throughout the day. Like they'll go take their lunch break up there. But it's a cool scene. That was the most fun X Games I think I've ever done was Oslo. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely a very cool community and environment out there.
I would love to go there.
Yeah.
Man, dude. Yeah, it's just this book, I completely forget the title. But it was like just those early days where people were and there was no chairlifts. Like this is like all stuff, like this is all foreign to us basically, like the transportation use of it and the hunting use of it. But like even like when recreational skiing was big, there were regular people, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, that would just hike up the mountain and strap skis onto their feet and on a completely ungroomed, like raw run, just go for it. And like that's how skiing started. And yeah, I don't know. It's just it changed my perspective on it. I've heard people say that like in skating, a trick doesn't count until it's done in the street, you know. And I didn't believe this for a long time, but it almost seems like a ski trick shouldn't count until it's done in the backcountry, because those are the roots of skiing. Like a completely wild environment is where skiing originated. There was no groomers for years and years. There was no chairlifts for years and years and years and years. That's
an interesting take.
Yeah.
To a point, because then you get into like, well, should you be allowed to take your snowmobile up there?
Yeah, exactly.
To get up to that?
Like, should you have to hike?
Should you be able to build that jump there, or should it just be a natural takeoff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is interesting. I don't have strong opinions about those rules. Like, even I would love to talk to someone that has like a strong opinion. And I know it's a rule, but like hitting an urban rail from the inside only.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like that's a strong rule. I'm just not a rules person in general, so I don't strongly
I have some pretty good stories on that. Let me take a quick break.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. So before we get into your
go ahead.
About rules, the book, funny enough, it's called Two Planks in a Passion.
Oh, there you go.
And it's by Roland Huntford. I highly, highly recommend it. Anyone that's into skiing, like, it doesn't get into obviously the modern history of like moguls and aerials turning into what we know now, but if you're looking for like an excruciatingly in-depth history of skiing, and I'm talking about excruciating, like it took me forever to read this book, highly recommend it. Very good. So I want to hear about people giving you a hard time for breaking rules.
It was just my first, like, I hit urban rails as a kid growing up, just with my friends. I mean, as kind of, I guess we all did. But my first like actual experience with like filming it and everything, I kind of got thrown in being in connection with a ski shop, the Sports Creole in Spokane, and some friends with Poor Boys. And they're like, oh, this kid Pete, he'll hit anything. He'll go show you some spots. And I remember one of the first times they came around, I got put out with, it was the second time, but I got put out with Matt Walker, who came to Spokane, and we're setting up this thing. And I remember helping him build the lip, and I got all the instruction on how you can't build the lip past the crossbar going up, and it has to be lower than that. And you can only go down one step if you have to, but you can't go past one step. Stairs have to be cleared. Everything has to be from the inside. And for him, it was like, at that point, every speed setup had to be natural, because we didn't have bungees or winches at that point.
Yeah.
And there were some pretty funny, like, learning conversations of what was cool or not. And Walker kind of schooled me on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I hit a bunch of spots with LJ, which was a very fun experience. It was mainly like, nobody wants to hit this stuff, so you go out with LJ and hurt yourself, so he doesn't have to hit it alone. And so I had some good times hitting rails that were way beyond my level. just because LJ needed somebody to hang out with.
Oh my God.
So it was pretty fun.
We're talking about Tucker and Tom, like LJ and Will, like throw them right into that conversation. Like they're just so good at rails. It's insane. Yeah.
There's a list of them. I mean, as far as getting the trick done and getting the rail done, LJ's up there with anyone.
I honestly, I'm always on the interviewing side of things, so I've never been the person being asked it, but like one of my favorite segments of all time is, and maybe it's not a segment, but like one of my favorite edits of all time is LJ's 2014 season recap.
Okay.
And it's just his urban in that. It's like, I think maybe it was a shot in a level 1 movie, or maybe I forget what it was, but it's like this insane, there's no snow besides the in run and out run. It's like this super steep Z rail that's white, painted white. I don't know if you. I
hit it with him.
Yo, you
it
did.
was in Spokane. The saw rail.
Is that what it is?
It may not be the same one. But there's no snow.
Steep, and also I think at one of the kinks, like the hill is tall enough that the tips of your skis.
No, that's so.
Yeah.
LJ named it the saw rail because everything was scary. Some homeless guy came over and told us that. That's funny. That was like my second time hitting rails with LJ, and they came to Spokane. There's no snow, and we'd like known about this rail for a long time, and nobody had done the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so we get there, pile up the snow that we could, dug out the side because our tips were dragging on it, and then the stairs were also capped with metal.
Yeah.
So if you came off stair side, you're just slipping out immediately.
Yeah.
And it was an experience. It was I got super lucky and got this close to getting it, like probably third or fourth try.
Yeah.
And I remember LJ being like, "Fuck, well if Pete can get this."
Yeah.
And that was a fun one. There were a few I hit with him that were really, really scary.
Yeah.
But that one...
Spokane in general is just a scary spot. Like, I drove through there...
Easy. That's my hometown.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's where I was born and raised.
Well, so I'll tell you my Spokane experience. You can tell me how accurate this is. So, Spokane is where Gonzaga is.
Yep.
And Gonzaga... And I went to University of Connecticut, so UConn, Gonzaga, we're always in the same conversation in March. So I went there. I'm like, let's see what the school's about. Oh, this is a pretty campus, whatever, Bulldog, cute mascot. And then you go downtown, and I swear to God, me and my girlfriend had the same reaction. It was like The Walking Dead for homeless people on this one corner. Like, I had never seen... And, I grew up in the Northeast. I was going to New York City regularly as a kid. I've never seen so many homeless people in my entire life all in one spot. It was insane.
It's gotten rough. Have you been to Seattle recently?
Every time I visit Jake Dubé, we go downtown to the line headquarters. There's a couple.
It's pretty loose. But yeah, I mean, Spokane definitely has its quirks.
Yeah.
It is. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But as far as a pretty cool place to grow up with close mountains, lakes, everything, it's a good spot. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah. But I don't know if you watched the Good Company movie this year, but they spent a fair amount of time out there.
I honestly don't even know if I watched it. It was like, I work football in the fall, so it's like premiere season for me. It's so hit or miss. Like, I'll either like watch it the second it's posted online, or it falls through the cracks for months. But I actually have a funny Spokane anecdote. Eastern Washington University is right near you guys.
Yep.
It's like 45 minutes down the road or something like that. They have the only red turf field in football.
Yep.
So I was like, we got to go see this. It's January, remember? So we drove past it. We're in Spokane, and I'm like, oh shit, we got to like backtrack 45 minutes and then continue 45. I'm like, but it's worth it. This is the only red turf field in the country.
Yep.
We pull up, completely covered in snow.
Yep. So we, my previous job, I worked for a construction company that did artificial turf, and we built that field.
No way.
Yeah.
Look at that. So, it's perfect. Yeah, I have a great photo of me standing in front of the field, but obviously it's all white because it's completely covered in snow. But
so planes actually use that field as a marker when they're flying into Spokane International Airport.
No way.
Because it's so bright as they're coming around, they can see the red.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it was not the most fun turf to install in the summer when it was 100 degrees. Red and black are not the best colors for radiating heat.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. I could never in a million years would I have predicted that connection for that story.
Yeah, there are most turf fields in the Northwest I've had my hands on. Yep.
Okay, well, I have to ask you then. Were you involved with Boise's field? Because Boise has a very, very famous blue.
No Smurf turf.
Yeah.
We didn't get that bid.
Okay, I was going to say.
But we did do University of Washington baseball and football.
Yeah.
And quite a few others.
That's so sick.
Yep.
Damn. Yeah. Cool stuff. Okay, while we're talking about Washington, I did not know about Hannaford until I went to Spring Pass last year and I drove through it. So anyone that doesn't know, Hanford, excuse me. Hannaford is in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Hanford is in Washington.
Yeah.
Hanford was involved in the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project has 3 bases, basically. It's Hanford, spot in Tennessee, I think it's called Oak Ridge, and then Los Alamos, which everyone knows, in New Mexico. Yep. That's like the whole Oppenheimer thing. But Hanford is like oh my god, I don't want to forget the name of it. What's the spot in Ukraine that where there's a big nuclear meltdown?
No, we're both blanking.
Yeah. Chernobyl.
Chernobyl. Yeah.
Hanford, Washington is the Chernobyl of America.
Yeah, I was actually having this conversation with my wife the other day.
Okay, yeah.
We were talking about nuclear cleanup, and I was like, well, I'm pretty sure Hanford, Washington is up there in issues.
It's the biggest. It's literally the Chernobyl of America. Yep. It's a huge. There's like all these nuclear waste issues.
Yep. And
so if you're driving to Mount Hood and you're coming from the east and you go along the river, you could, before you turn to Hood River, you could stop by and I think you have to set up a tour or whatever because it's like the Department of Energy base. But it's like the biggest nuclear disaster in America is right there in Washington.
Yeah, I heard a lot about it as a kid on the news. There was always something.
Yeah, so I had no idea until last year that was a thing.
Yep. Yeah, pretty funny little. Washington has some interesting quirks, especially when you go over the pass from Snoqualmie Pass. The middle east of the state is very different than the west.
Yeah, so wild.
It's a funny place.
Man, okay. Get back on track. We're talking about rail skiers. This is something I wanted to ask you about because I feel like you and Jason could have gone on for this forever in your podcast. You might see where this is going. Rail jams in the Olympics.
Oh, God.
You said it's coming down. You guys said it's coming down the pike. Is that true?
Well, Jason said that.
Okay, Jason said it. And
Jason knows. His finger's way more on that pulse, but I mean, I guess it is. And like slopestyle and half pipe, it's like Jason said, it's inevitable. If they want it, they're going to get it. And it's our best effort to make it our sport for them. And I think that, like we talked about in our podcast, that was Steele Spence's major influence in slopestyle and half pipe specifically before Big Air, was that you wanted to make it still our sport, have our judges, because there was a huge push at the beginning to just have moguls judges, judge slopestyle, judge in moguls and aerials judges.
So I'm gonna interrupt really quick. Yeah. So when was like the process of getting slopestyle and half pipe, slopestyle, Big Air, half pipe, all of that into the Olympics? Like when was that initiated? When are these first conversations happening?
My guess, and I guess my understanding, is somewhere like it'd been talked about a lot, but the major push was like 2009, 10, 11.
Okay. Yeah.
And then obviously it's happening in 12. Yeah. And that was my first year judging.
Okay.
And so I was like thrown into this as like, this is going to be an Olympic sport. This is an Olympic sport. It's announced, and they're now earning points for their country and their team and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's one of those things where you want to, if it's going to happen, you want it to be a good representation of us. But I think my point that I kept making in our podcast is, if you look at what we were as an industry and as competitions in slopestyle and half pipe before the Olympics, there was a lot more. There was a lot more events that weren't anything to do with the FIS.
Yeah.
And I think that when people's focus shifted to be Olympics, that the money and everything dried up for these independent contests. Even if you look at Dew Tour, you went from 4 stops to 1. Mm-hmm. You look at all these other ones. I mean, you had World Ski Invitational at Whistler. You had all these other independents, even like North Face Park and Pipe. And it's kind of, if it doesn't mean anything towards the Olympics, it kind of feels like it's faded into not as important, which I feel like those contests were how the people we looked up to made money, made a name for themselves. I don't know. It was
just the pipeline to becoming known.
Yeah. And it's like there was a lot more money involved back then.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it, but I'm sure you saw Gepper post about how much money he made this year.
Yeah.
With multiple podiums and 4th and 5th place. And it's like, you could easily make that with a minimum wage
Wasn't
job.
it like $15,000 or something like that? Yeah. It's just like,
it's crazy. And the amount of effort and time and money spent into that to make that happen, it just doesn't add up. And I think that so that's where I'm hesitant to say, let's push for this, because it'd be great to have Tucker Fitzsimons go win a gold medal at the Olympics. It'd be really cool for our sport. But then what? Yeah. I mean, it definitely can be lucrative for some people when they have Olympic fame, but you look at some others and it's just a thing. Yeah. So, and it's a huge thing. It's a huge accomplishment, but at the same time, I don't think that the monetary value is necessarily as much as we put on it. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, like you have a daughter now. Mm-hmm. My biggest nightmare is having a kid that wants to compete and like in a sport where the highest level is the Olympics. Yeah. You know, like it's different when you have a kid that plays hockey, kid that plays baseball, basketball, whatever. But if I have a daughter and she really wants to get into gymnastics, it's like, Jesus Christ, this is like a huge, long journey that at the end of the day, I mean, listen, anyone that podiums for America, I love them. But at the end of the day, it's only the gold medalist that goes down in history. So it's
not necessarily though, because I love Joss. Yeah. And I love that gold. I mean, that run.
Just that whole podium was great.
Yeah. But who do you remember from that podium at that Olympics? You remember Gus.
Yeah, well, it's because it was a bigger story.
Hey, Gus adopting the dogs was a bigger story. Nick putting out that he wanted to date someone was a bigger story. And then you get poor little Joss, who's like, I just won. Yeah. I was last onto the team, and it was a controversy. Yeah. And then I show up here and learn a new trick, and that was. If there's like some ski resorts will do like hey, we have an Olympic gold medalist that's given like a lecture in the, not like a lecture, but like a meet and greet kind of. Yeah, true. They're never doing that for a bronze or silver medalist. Like it's like the name. Oh, they do.
Are you sure?
Oh, they do.
I've never seen like, hey, come check out our bronze medalist from 1968.
Oh, Devin Logan has done a lot with that silver medal. I'll tell you that. But they do. I mean, even just an Olympian. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of that. I think what sticks with us generally is the gold medalist.
Of course, but you're the best in the world for that year.
Yeah, at that single contest at that point in time.
Yeah, well, we view it a little bit more nuanced. Like we know that it's like, oh, well, this is just one contest in the context of every other contest. But for the world, it's like, that's the best skier in the world.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that's, like, for me, on an Olympic standpoint, if you compare this to other Olympic sports, it's like, all right, you're the fastest person to run 100 meters in the world at this point with the best of the best, and that's not changing. That track is the same. Everything's the same. One random slope course that's built in China decides who's the best in the world. It's very different to me.
Well, I think Joss is a great example of it, because Joss, like, he's a great skier then, and he still is today. Like his clips from Kimbo are great, and he's a super important community. Joss is a great dude. Yep. Was Joss the best skier in the world at that time? Probably not. He just
at that contest and at that time. I'm going to disagree. Okay. At that contest, at that time, he was the best skier in the world. Leading up into that, I judged the last Olympic qualifier at Park City, and I remember being asked by the U.S. coaches, and because they sat us down and they said, "Who would you pick to be on that team?" And it comes down to Schlopey, Tom, and Joss, and they said, who would you pick? Yeah. And it was unanimous through our group. Joss is the best skier right now out of that group.
That's incredible.
He was so good at that Park City contest. Then as soon as he got to Russia, I remember Peter Adam Crook, Earl, sent me a video of Joss doing his first switch right trip. Yeah. And I immediately was like, Joss is going to win the Olympics. And he didn't lose a round. I mean, he won qualifying at the highest score. He had the highest score through the whole contest. I mean, he, at that point in time, was the best skier in the world. That's for sure. Incredible. Yes. So I do think that was deserved. Yeah. I mean, you could throw anybody in that mix, but Joss went out there and he was on it. Yeah. And I mean, everyone was there. Yeah. So
that's really, I didn't know that actually. That's really interesting. It's like, I don't know, I think about it with, obviously you could tell through this interview, I think about it in terms of traditional sports a lot. Like UConn, and I think in their 2014 run, they weren't undefeated that season, but they were undefeated through their conference championship and then through March Madness. So it's like they're the best that season, even if they didn't have the best regular season.
See, I feel like we can relate a lot more than when I am having ski conversations with other people because of traditional sports. Yeah. I mean, my nickname is Varsity Pete. Okay.
Yes, you played college football.
I did play college football, short-lived, but I did play college football. Yeah. Fun fact. And it's... I wouldn't say it's...
Was that D3?
NAIA.
Okay.
But, yeah, I wouldn't say it's stuck with me. It's more of haunted me. Yeah. It's been more of Jason's favorite thing to bring up about me for years. That and my competitiveness. Yeah. So Jason will regularly bring up how it doesn't matter where I'm at. If I have a chance to ski in like a rail jam, I'm going to try to beat the living shit out of anybody else.
I did some research on you. You went six times back to back in the Boreal Express.
Okay, so that's a perfect example. Yeah, I'm competing against like 12-year-olds. Yeah, like a few friends who were in their 20s, and then like Cody LaPlante when he was 12 years old was in that. Yeah. So and
you stomped on him.
I just stomped on him. Yeah. No, it was. I vividly remember. I think we've talked about this on our podcast. Maybe, I don't know, we've talked about it so many times, but Jason coming up to me, end of one of those rail jams being like, I don't know, dude, like, it's pretty close, because Jason was judging it with Noah and Kai. Yeah. And I hiked up and flipped onto a rail, and he's like, I've never seen anyone with that competitive drive, and I don't know, I love rail jams for that reason. Great. Yeah. I guess I'm just a rail jam skier. I always have been.
Would you try to be on the Olympic team if they
Jason jokes about that, but no, I'm well past my prime. Yeah. But I would say every time I go skiing, like, I mean, I moved to Tahoe and I have my option of however many resorts are here. I bought a Boreal pass.
Yeah. So because of the park at the time. Yeah.
It was just now.
Oh, like now? This year? Okay, this year. Yeah. Okay, when you
so back, I'm still out hammering rails. Like, this is like we have these conversations about like skiing, and you get older and you want to do like my favorite thing is to still go hit rails.
And it's crazy because Palisades might be one of the best resorts in the world.
It's super fun. Yeah. Like, and I enjoy skiing the mountain. Like I like to go skiing, but if I have my one day out of the week where I get to go skiing, I'm gonna go in the afternoon and night and gonna go ski rails at Boreal.
Well, this sets you up great for being an old man. Yeah. Then you could be like, well, if they had the rail jam in the Olympics when I was in my prime, then I would have gotten gold.
No, God, no. We're talking like very mediocre rail jams that I did well in, but
so this is the thought I had about rail jams. It's already not in the Olympics. And even in my lifetime, so say the past like 10 to 15 years of paying attention to skiing, I've already seen rail jams die off. So I don't know if it being in the Olympics could harm it any more than it's already been harmed.
Yeah, fair.
No, there's no rails I think like my home resort, Ski Sundown, they used to do like a dozen rail jams a year in the off season. Gone. Yeah. Like everything I paid attention to, it's all gone.
And I grew up growing up in Spokane, I skied at Mount Spokane, and then I also skied at Schweitzer. And there was a rail jam like once a month, maybe more. Yeah. And there was a guy, Ben Spinney, who was a metal fabricator who built rails and would go around with a scaffolding setup and set up rail jams all over, and would like host these events. And So I feel like we had rail jams all the time. You had Campus Rail Jam Tour.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they still do those, though.
I don't think they do.
Are you sure? I think that I think UNH still does it up in New Hampshire.
Really?
I'm sure they.
Like the circuit of the Campus Rail Jam Tour
I didn't
that
realize
like
that was a thing.
yeah. So Cricket Wireless, this is dating myself,
Yeah.
but sponsored the Campus Rail Jam Tour, and it went to stops kind of all. I think it was just all over the West. Might have been a few East stops too, but then they had a final in Red. No, it's not Red Square. That's in Seattle. Pioneer Square in Portland.
Okay.
And they'd set up their setup. It was like a down rail and flat down or something. And everybody who I think won all the stops got to come to that one or podiumed at a stop or whatever. And I went to 2 of those finals. Yeah. That's actually the first time I met Kai. I was on a podium, or I got 3rd in finals there with Kai. But yeah, those were super cool, and they were all over the West, all over different places, and you could qualify in, but there's just not. Yeah, I guess.
I think, well, it's so hard to pinpoint it, but it's like, it seems like action sports in general has kind of gone by the mainstream wayside. Like, there's less money in it overall. Like, you look back on the early 2000s, like, there's snowboarding video games, ski video games, skateboarding, like mainstream best-selling skateboard video games. And obviously the skate series is really big, right? Like forever. But it just seems like there was like an extreme, quote unquote, like kind of thing going on in America when the X Games first got started and just all through the early 2000s. And I don't think that the Olympics has killed that extreme spirit. I think it just naturally had its moment and then kind of went by the wayside. So companies like Cricket Wireless aren't super aware of extreme sports anymore. They're moving on to the next. They're moving on to some whatever.
Well, I can think of so many random like city big airs and different things that they used to have.
They had one at Fenway Park in Boston. That was so sick. Yeah.
I was devastated. It was like I was still judging at that point.
Yeah.
And I would say out of any of the judges in the world at any point, I'm the biggest baseball fan. Yeah. And I did not get on that contest.
At Fenway?
Yeah. And I was devastated. They're going through the Green Monster, and I'm just sitting at home like, you guys don't even fucking watch baseball. Yeah. like I grew up in a baseball family. Like baseball was I played football in college, but that was just I got more money to go to college for that. Yeah. But baseball has always been my first love. Yeah. And so seeing that, and then the one in Atlanta and everything, and I'm still, the guys from U.S. Free Skiing and U.S. Snowboarding, they're talking about doing more stadium big airs. And I have put my name in as like, put me first in line. I'll announce, but I'll be a production assistant. I don't care.
You just want to be there.
Get me there and in that thing, because it's such a cool environment. Like, I don't know. They've talked about doing one in Chicago at Wrigley.
Oh, that'd be so
and
sick.
That would be cool. But I don't think anything tops doing the one in Fenway.
Well, it's just all of the memories of those big air contests got brought up with the last Olympics, because it's so funny. Like just seeing the general public's reaction to skiing. So when they had the big air venue at the most recent Olympics, where it's like literally next to some sort of smokestack or whatever they call them.
They're cooling stacks for the old nuclear reactors.
Yes. So they're like, what's going on? I thought this was the Winter Olympics. Why is big air not on the mountain? Yep. And it's so funny seeing like the general public get completely enraged by the setting of a city big air, which has been a thing for a while.
But let's step back on that. It's China.
Yeah.
So they're going to get mad about
everything.
Some people are going to get mad about everything.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the, and I support like the rail jam aspect of things being more mainstream in that kind of area, because it is more accessible to people to watch. Yeah. And that one in China is like the best venue for big air. It's built specifically for it. It's not scaffolding. It's up year round, and it's maintained by them so that they can have that all the time, and it will be there for a long period of time. It's not it's not a waste of money to just build something of scaffolding and then tear it down.
Yeah.
But at that same sort of thing, as far as accessibility, like the stuff that Red Bull does, where they have the snowboard contest in the city.
Yeah.
And the one that they did, I think it was in Minnesota this year, where it was on like the, I don't know, state capital or whatever, coming off the rails.
Is it snowboarding or skiing?
Snowboarding.
Okay, yeah.
So the original one was in the park in Minnesota that everyone has had their urban shots at, with the big colorful wall on the side. I think it's St. Paul, maybe, I don't know. And then the second one was in Detroit that had like the above, everyone could stand above, and the rails went down into the tunnel.
Yeah.
And then this year was at like a Capitol building or something. But those sort of events are like what we need in skiing, because it was like 70,000 people were out there just watching.
Yeah. So
normal people.
Yeah.
And Red Bull is always, people can say whatever they want about energy drinks, but Red Bull and what they pushed in action sports, all sports really, and their like ability and like not hesitating to just try something. You look at Red Bull Crashed Ice, it was a downhill ice skate series, and they put them all over the place. Yeah. And hundreds of thousands of people came out for it because it was awesome.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing that skiing needs, is like, we need a in-city rail gym. You saw what Casabon did this year, where he had at a spot that he's hit before, and all of Quebec and everyone came out for it.
Yeah.
Like, that sort of stuff is so cool.
It's so good. Yeah, I'm personally in favor of having rail jam in the Olympics. Ugh. I just think, and I especially agree with Jason. Like, it's going to happen regardless, so might as well make it sick.
Yeah.
But just the prospect of seeing rail jam skiers in the Olympics would be so insane.
And I think my point of that with Jason too is like, as long as we don't have the slope guys, and
there has to be a different.
But at the same time, like, who's to say that Colby Stevenson and Alex Hall shouldn't be allowed, and Mac Forehand shouldn't be allowed to also compete in that, because they are some of the best rail skiers in the world. And
it was the exact same podium 2 years in a row for Dew Tour.
Exactly, but it's like one of those things. It's like, why would we say you can't do this?
Yeah,
that's where
I think that's what. And believe me, I love those guys. I think they're sick. I don't want to see them competing in a rail in the Olympics. I like, have your shine with slopestyle. I want to see Tucker Fitzsimons. I want to see Cal Carson. I want to. If we had the Andrew Egan, Cal Carson, and I don't even know who else. Throw Jackson Carstetter, Tucker Fitzsimons. Throw all the rail skiers in there. If you saw that in the Olympics, we'd be like, this is fucking sick. This is the best event that's ever happened.
And they'd all get beat by Noah doing land holding.
You guys had a great discussion about that too. You can't cheat land holding. Like, it's either you got it or you don't.
No.
Yeah.
But no, it's like, I get that. It's just one of those things. I was there when slopestyle and everything got pushed in. Yeah. And it's like, and it's almost like you're taking the soul out of it by putting it on that podium. And it was super exciting for like Devin Logan, who's one of my best friends, her getting a medal in that first Olympics and us celebrating that. And like, that was awesome. Like, we're in our early 20s and we're partying because our friend just got an Olympic medal and stuff. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know if this is like sustainable, I guess would be the best, and it's proven to really not be. But I don't know. And even, I guess you also have to take COVID into account, but everything's changed in the past decade. Like, going to Dew Tour, going to X Games, it used to be like everyone was there. Everyone would come out for it, and it was like the most fun thing. And this is such an old head thing. Again, just throwing us the old head takes, but I almost put that on the soundboard before the last episode. We joke about that all the time, but it's funny to like see where it's gone over the last decade for sure. Yeah.
Well, I've been to 4 X Games at this point, and
any before COVID?
I worked the 2018 one.
Okay.
But then, so it was that 2018 one, a big gap, and then the ones after COVID. But so it seems like a more, and it feels so corny using this word, but it seems like a more core audience comes out to Do Tour. Like you see, like I feel like I see so many more people that I'm interested in at Do Tour, but X Games to me, and obviously didn't see it in the good old days. Well, but it seems like all the big people are still at X Games.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe like if you look at timing, maybe I didn't see it in the like good old days because I didn't get to see. I watched from home the Tanner and Simon battles and those sort of things, or when they had grandstands at the bottom of X Games. But
I can't imagine that. Yeah,
my first X Games was 2012, I think, and it was. I mean, they still had the mega tower at the bottom, and they probably still had that in 2018.
They had it in 2018 and 2019, and then after COVID, they've never had that big mega structure right at the base.
Yep, and again. So like, and. Like, I mean, all the ones I remember in the past, I guess, till almost COVID, snowmobiles and everything. It was a insane event.
Well, also, there would be, like, celebrities there, too. Yep. Like, I remember...
And there still are.
Yeah, but not, like, it's not... But I think that reflects extreme sports not being, like, in the mainstream anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I do, like, I was looking through stuff not that long ago on my phone. I had like random pictures of celebrities, like at some of my first X Games, just me snapping them like sneakily, like, oh, P-Rod, Nija, like all these people. But this year,
even like regular, like regular celebrities. I feel like I remember like Katy Perry being at an X Games. It's like, why the fuck is she here? But it's like.
But there are still celebrities there. I mean, this year the VIP section was like very exclusive. Like we weren't allowed in there as announcers, even though it was not hard to get in there. But they had like the bottom at the end where the barbecue restaurant was just VIP this year.
Okay.
And I mean, I went in there a few times and you'll know this name. Most people who are listening probably won't, but Jason Garrett. Was just hanging out in there, and like there's people that come out for it that you wouldn't expect.
So random.
I mean, I think it might have been 2018, but the Kelsey brothers were in the bottom crowd cheering on Maggie Voisin. Like there's people that come out that always kind of surprise me.
Well, so this is gonna be a good transition because this is something I wanted to ask you about, having insider info. So part of the appeal with X Games, especially if you're getting big names there that are outside the extreme sports, is the fact that it's in Aspen. Yeah. You know, Aspen's a desirable town to go to any time of year, regardless of X Games or not. You know, so it's like that's just like a bonus. The X Games kind of a bonus for these celebrities visiting Aspen.
I have a feeling I know where you're going here.
Where's it going to be next year? What's going on? There's no contract signed. I've already heard that Do Tour is done.
Yep.
And that it's going to Rockstar, I think.
Yep. Cool Borders only.
Okay. So what's going on? Give us.
Well, that's what I've heard. But,
just give us some inside rumors.
I've been asking. I was asking at X Games the entire time. Every person that I knew that was important enough that should have known didn't give me a straight answer.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of talk about California.
Where in California? Because this is something I talked about with people. Because and you know this, you have to have a half pipe.
So they want to. So what I heard is everything wanted to be a little more centralized. They're based out of California. They have Ventura.
So the new owner's MSP.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what you're saying with they.
That is
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I've heard Bear.
That would be. I think I've heard you say that.
Yep.
But I've also heard that.
That was the first one I heard.
Yeah.
Don't know how they'll do a slope course.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Bear's super fun. War Rails were awesome. War Rails.
Yeah.
Such a fun event. Bear's great. They can't build a slope course. They can't build.
How do you house that many people up at Bear?
That's the next.
There's no air. I don't think there's an airport up there. There might be like a small airstrip or something.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like, not how do you get far from LA.
Yeah, not super far, but it's like Aspen has the airport literally like basically on the slope course.
Exactly. Private jets flying in and out.
Yeah.
Have you flown into that airport before?
Yeah.
One of the coolest airports to fly into.
Oh, it's so sick.
Especially if you're coming from Denver.
If you have the good weather to actually land
and it's just like you rip up and then you're down in. But I've heard the resort formerly known as Squaw Palisades.
Yeah.
Which again, we're talking housing people nightmare.
Palisades and Bear both have the same housing issue. Palisades even like worse than Bear.
Well, not only that, and it's been proven in the last couple of years with the World Cup that they have out here how chaotic it is with the amount of people. And I mean, even push back to the Olympics when it was hosted here, and it was a disaster as far as people coming in and out.
So just with this like an inside, because I just learned this about Palisades. So they have like the main housing there is the Village, which is like the kind of their hotel, but most of those units are privately owned. So if you're having a big event there,
which you would think that similar to Copper.
Okay, yeah.
So Copper, a lot of those, I mean, almost all of those units I've ever stayed at Copper are all privately owned. Okay. They're all different, and
but my thinking is that the people that own them would want to be there if it's an X Games or Olympic level event.
Yep. And then the other one I've heard is Park City.
That seems like the most reasonable one.
It does
so far.
Yep, especially setting up for the Olympics in whatever 2030 year.
Yeah, 2030. I think.
Yeah. So I don't know.
What about Mammoth? Thoughts on Mammoth?
I have heard Mammoth too. I hate Mammoth.
Why is that?
I hate Mammoth in the winter. First time back to Mammoth for me this year since I think 2016, maybe 2016.
Yeah.
Because every experience I had there at a contest was awful. I'm talking 120 mile an hour winds, freezing rain, stuck in the Mammoth Mountain Inn for 2 weeks straight with no cell service because the cell towers burned down in Bishop.
Yeah.
Like, Mammoth should not host things in the winter. Like, and we saw that this year with the Grand Prix there.
Yeah, where I heard you guys talking about that.
I mean, it was great skiing weather if you're just going to go out and free ski, but to hold a contest, it was awful. And that's almost, I'd say probably 75% of the time Mammoth has a contest, weather.
Yeah. But in terms of, it's so funny, every place that we've mentioned is missing one key element. And like Mammoth they have the infrastructure, they have the slope style course, they have the half pipe.
Yeah, Palisades could do it.
I think Palisades could do it.
They used to have the half pipe. Yeah. I don't think it's been built for years.
Yeah.
They have the ability to build a slope course. There is housing and stuff relatively close by. I mean, we're talking people would probably have to stay in Reno.
Yeah. It loses, but like I think that what X Games has, and they probably, it almost feels ridiculous saying this, but I think they factored in. Aspen has that sexy factor that brings in so much money.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think like we've talked about this a lot afterwards, not on our podcast, but it would feel wrong for us and our generation not being in Aspen. Yeah. It's been in Aspen for so long. And I think I can remember probably 4 times, maybe 3 times where the contract has come up and, is it going to be back in Aspen? And it is.
Yeah.
And like, it's one of those things where, let's say 10 years ago, I could have seen it going to Breck or something like that. I mean, those kind of places make sense, but now it's completely different. Yeah. And I don't want it to leave Aspen. I love going to Aspen for X Games. It feels special still.
This is what everyone said about X Games leaving LA though. Because X Games was in Los Angeles forever, and it was like, and like you were saying, all the celebrities, all that, like it was like, it's skateboarding, of course, it's in California, of course, and then all of a sudden they're in Minnesota, all of a sudden they're in Austin, so it's possible, but
it's possible, but I feel like yes, that's a fair comparison, but it is different.
Yeah,
Aspen's small. Yeah, everything about Aspen and Winter X Games is. It's Aspen. And
they shut down a large portion of Buttermilk for the event. Like, I don't know any other mountain that could really shut down that much.
And it just has, you're right there, the town, the amount of events they host, the amount of sponsor parties and stuff.
Well, so this is something else I wanted to ask you. And I think I just misinterpreted what you're saying. But looking at like the year-round events that Aspen has, because you were just talking about the events during X Games, correct? But so year-round, does Aspen have any other big ski event that's like that brings in a lot?
Aspen
of
Open.
But is that as big as?
No. Yeah. It's not even close. Yeah. I'm sure they have other events that bring a ton of people because it is Aspen.
Yeah.
They have a rugby tournament in the summer. I'm sure they have car festivals and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's. Aspen, it not being an Aspen, at least for me, my generation, it would be weird. But I've been to X Games in Norway. I've been a part of other X Games, but it just wouldn't feel right not being an Aspen.
Yeah. So changing gears.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone agrees Aspen.
Yeah. Well, even if you've never been there, I feel like you hear Aspen X Games, you want to go.
Yeah.
Like maybe Mammoth X Games, it's like, I don't know, maybe that's just my own personal bias.
I think I agree. Yeah. Okay. Dew Tour. What the hell is going on with Dew Tour? I feel like that is more of like less rumors, more like confirmed.
So from what I've heard, well, this is confirmed. Dew Tour and Mountain Dew and Pepsi are rebranding how they sponsor athletes. From my understanding, and this is just from what I've heard. Rockstar dropped their entire ski team. So there are no more skiers sponsored by Rockstar as of this year. Yeah. So Alex Ferreira, Aaron Blanc, Alexi Godbout, you name it.
Yeah.
No longer sponsored by Rockstar. Have to go find someone else. And Rockstar is now going to be the helmet sponsor for Danny Davis and Red Gerard. No more Mountain Dew sponsoring their athletes. Yeah. So they're rebranding where they're putting their money into it, and I think they're moving Mountain Dew out of action sports, from what I understand.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with Dew Tour. All I've heard is that it's done, and there's no more Dew Tour. I've heard rumors of Rockstar games.
That's also what I heard, yeah.
It being snowboard only.
I did not hear that part of it.
Well,
but it's funny. I heard it from a snowboarder that was talking.
If they have no more sponsored athletes on Rockstar, why would they in skiing? Why would they want skiers there?
Yeah.
And I have I lived through an era of ski versus snowboard beef and all sorts of fun stuff, but I love snowboarding. It's one of my favorite things to watch. I find it so interesting that we can't continue to gain off of these companies as a group.
Yeah.
But
it's not there yet. Yeah. But I think blended rail jams and blended events I think that if we're talking trend watch, I think that's a trend that people got to look out for.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I noticed at the Bomb Hole Cup this year that they did skiers on boards, which was a pretty, like a bank slalom of skiers trying to snowboard, which was that's kind of funny. Yeah. But I don't know. It's
so Dew Tour is a mess right now.
Yeah,
and X Games and obviously X Games still exists, but it's just the venue is TBD.
Well, and Dew Tour, in my opinion, has been maybe not a mess, but very different since it left Breckenridge.
Yeah. I wasn't really paying attention to it when it was at Breck.
It was so good in Breck.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was pre-Olympics though, correct?
Nope. Still they use it as an Olympic qualifier.
So
in
from 20
years.
Okay.
So I think it stopped in 2018, maybe.
So one Olympic cycle of it being still at Breck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was always one of my favorite slope courses. It was one of the most interesting ones because you had rails, jumps.
Yeah.
With turns in the course. The only downside about Breck is that the pipe's like halfway up the mountain if you want to go watch it. And pipe is the easiest thing for spectators to watch, so you don't get as many people for that venue. But yeah, I mean, Breck, it's too bad that Vail decided to do what they did with Breck, because horrible. Breck should have contests, should have people in that town. I mean, Breck's another one of those places like Aspen that host people super well. There's always fun stuff to do in town. So reliving the glory days over here. But yeah,
Breck is like the definition of the glory days because it's such such a clear.
You see downfall. The same people too. Yeah, like it's Breck.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. One second, I'm gonna go pee.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. And the mountains are blue.
Oh, yeah. Picked them up at lunch today. I was like, we should probably have beers in the fridge.
Yeah.
All right. It's always funny. Jason has always got a seltzer water, and Noah's never drinking anything. We're doing stuff, and I'm like, I got like 3 beers lined up. I'm like, we need beverages when we record something. I want to.
Oh, dude, you're so lucky that you guys have like counterparts that like I've always been a solo show.
Yeah,
you guys like
it's tough
doing the Mount Rushmore on episode 10 or your first Patreon episode. So good.
We just did another one. I guess I don't know when this is going to come out, but we did favorite ski models. So favorite, like, let's say I used Solomon Suspect as an example because I knew nobody would pick that. But yeah, it was good. It was pretty fun. We had Jason, Noah, myself, and then Micah Gentman, who's the owner of the Sports Creole ski shop in Spokane. Yeah. And it was a fun one because Micah's a few years older than us, so his picks were a little more diverse. But there were some picks in there that were pretty obscure. I'm
so envious of that. It's so funny. Like,
well, you can call in, you can join in. We'll do a Mount Rushmore on the next one, and you can be a part of it. We'll need an extra voice in it.
It'll have to be a topic that I'm knowledgeable about. But
it's better if you're not.
It's actually funnier.
Yeah.
And do you guys? I didn't listen to the Patreon one. Did you guys do snake draft style? Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I got caught in the snake bad. Yeah. Garrett got caught in it, and I called him out for it. I was like, "Don't get caught in the snake." Yeah. And it comes back to me, and I even asked for a skip. And I was bad. Yeah. But I think I was on my fourth pick of favorite skier. Yeah. And I had multiple people in mind, and I was kind of going for a pander pick, and I ended up taking, I don't know, I took Clayton, which was like, if you look at like segments and everything through my years of watching movies, it was a good pick for me, but it wasn't like, I don't know. It was a bit of a pander pick. I was trying to get some votes.
Yeah, no, and you won.
Jason was not happy when we recorded last night because Jason lost. Jason even lost to Garrett. Yeah, and I made sure he knew that, and he was not happy with my pander picks. Yeah, but
it's so funny. I mean, we were talking about that at Mammoth last year, like wanting to do kind of like game show style segments. You being a PMT fan is like, it makes so much sense.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so great. Like, I don't even know other good Mount Rushmore topics. Worst trends on the mountain.
I have so many in our text thread right now that it's like favorite. We did favorite ski models, and then we have some obscure ones like favorite things that Garrett said, which no one will know or pay attention to, but it'd be funny to us. Yeah. Which I feel like is more like part of my take. Yeah. Along those lines, but like favorite ski segments, favorite parks, like there could be some good ones.
Yeah, you guys are better suited for that than.
Well, maybe. I don't know. We'll at least have an opinion. It may not be right, but
So I mean, me and a bunch of other 25-year-olds talking about best segments of all time. It's like we don't have the same depth of knowledge.
I mean, the information's out there.
Yeah, but you saw this with. Have you been following the "We Done with the '90s" trend about Michael Jordan?
No.
Oh, okay. You'll love this. This is a TikTok thing. This probably missed out.
See, I don't do TikTok.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm going to have to include the going to the bathroom part because we completely changed gears. So for years and years and years, people were talking about Michael Jordan versus LeBron. Yep. Who's the GOAT? And then all of the old heads were saying, you just go back and watch the footage. Michael Jordan's great, blah, blah, blah. So recently, people did go back and watch the footage, and it's like the worst basketball you've ever seen. And so everyone's like, "Yeah, we're done with the '90s. Like, enough of what you're saying." Yeah. So you're saying go back and watch the segments.
But it's that's a fair point. See, this is why you called us old heads. Yeah. But it's I don't know. I still think that some of those old segments would still hold up.
I think so too.
I mean, even rewatching like Pep's segment from 1242. Yeah, some of the stuff's outdated. The skis are back mounted. Whatever else, but that segment was so groundbreaking. Yeah, and some of the stuff from ski porn. Some of the hip shots now are very relevant because we had what they did at the nines with the hip and stuff to see how big they were going back then still. And we talked in our last episode on the Good Enough podcast about someone needs to compare what Kim Goobser did at the nines and his height, obviously setting a world record with Guinness, to what Candide did at Mammoth going over that hip. Yeah. I mean, that shot still, like, it still gives me chills.
Yeah.
Like, it's still one of the most insane things ever done on skis.
It's so good.
85 did.
Yeah.
Like, on really back-mounted skis.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, my God. I cannot wait till you see what we have, what me and I are cooking up. You're gonna love this. But, so, one thing about old segments that I remember from... like the Level 1 podcast. I don't know if you listened to like the Level 20 thing that they put out during 2020.
I haven't, no.
Oh, it's really good.
Okay.
It's really good, especially if you buy the box set.
Yeah.
So they do like you know how old DVDs used to do like the director's commentary.
Yeah, we talked about this
in the bonus features.
In the bonus episode, I think, in our 10.42069.
Yeah. So you get to watch the movie. Basically, what Level 1 did was they would just break down like certain segments or certain shots that they thought were important after a rewatch. And Josh was talking about how in his first movie, to make a variety of shots, he would just mirror the the shot. So if we're talking about watching old segments, there's people doing left spins and right spins that were only doing left spins just because of the editing. That's
hilarious.
Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you gotta listen to that.
Well,
it's the best.
I mean, calling me a ski nerd would probably be an understatement.
Yeah.
Watching, like, growing up, what we had was news scores and these DVDs we got when the movie came out. And so you watched the movie over and over again, every segment you liked, and then you got into bonus and you watched every bonus segment over and over again. You watched the director's cut, you listened to what they said about everything, and I watched every single one of Level 1s all the way through. Poor Boys. It was mainly Level 1 and Poor Boys. I didn't touch Matchstick. I did a little Matchstick, but not as much of the TGR or anything else.
Yeah.
I was a park skier. I only cared about that. And I mean, Jason, I can't remember what he called them, but were the hidden sections on the DVD. He had a little name for them. But anyway, those, I mean, were so great. And you got all the bonus little features. I can vividly remember, I think it might have been Refresh or something. No, I don't know. But Brogan at Hood sitting on the rock by Trillium. Yeah. Saying over and over again, I like to meet new people. Like, stuff like that. Like, I don't know.
It does seem like some of the... And it honestly seems like this with everything, but it seems like a lot of the soul has been taken out of it. Yeah.
Well, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about with Jib League and that, like, documentary type series of the connection with the people.
Yeah.
And these movies that we grew up on, and Level 1 and Poor Boys and all, you got to know these people through, like, these bonus segments.
Yeah.
You got to see when they got locked out of their room at JOY, we talked about in ours, and you got to see everyone in the hotel being drunk and messing around.
Yeah.
Chug Life was a prime example when I was in my, like, late teens, early 20s of, like, this is what's actually going on at these. I want to be there.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go to these different contests, because that looks so fun.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's just drinking 15 beers and running down a hallway like PK Hunder and trying to flip off the wall.
Well, this also plays into it. Like, now, because of the Olympics, like, that's not how an Olympian behaves. You know? Like, I think the culture of partying in mainstream skiing has changed.
Yeah,
like, Iberg sent me this video.
Relatively.
Yeah.
I would say it's more measured. I would say people... I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I would say people still like to go have fun.
Yeah.
I also go show my face at some I'm getting old, so less and less, but
How old are you now?
I'm 34 going on 35 this summer. Yeah. It's crazy. A quick tidbit on that. I remember when Steele Spence turned 30.
Yeah.
This was like my first year judging, becoming friends with Steele, and I went to his 30th birthday party in Moab, and I remember I was like 22 or something, 23, and thinking he was so fucking old.
This guy's a dinosaur.
Oh my God.
30,
Steele
Jesus
is
Christ.
so old, and I remember skiing with him. I was like, he's pretty good for being 30. and
Basically
not that,
dead.
I mean, like, yeah, X Games medalist, like Steele Spence. He's pretty good for an old guy, and now I'm where I'm at now. So anyway, but it has changed as far as like people going out at contests. I remember my first ones I went to, you'd see pretty much most people out at the bar before days of contests. Everyone would go.
I mean, Tanner on a live stream back, I could actually kind of pinpoint February 2023. He went on a live stream. It's when him and Andy Perry were arguing with each other.
I was tuned in.
Yeah, I was tuned in on both. I had to open my laptop. But Tanner said that Red Bull at these parties used to give out Red Bull branded bags of Coke. And like that, so that's just a microcosm of like what the party scene used to be like.
I personally never witnessed that. I mean, my focus has always been more on the how many free beers and stuff I could hold in my hands.
You were in it for the mooching.
I was in it for the free beers and hanging out with friends, less of the bathroom party. But actually none of the bathroom party, but it's interesting. I mean, I think my favorite ones, this is obscure, but the monster parties at the top of Aspen, I'm sure you've heard about.
I've heard
before.
Plenty about.
Have you ever been to one?
No, I mean, whenever I go to X Games now, we try to get wristbands to the monster party, but never. I missed the last year of the summit, like when you had to take the gondola up to the top.
Well, they're still fun, even not at the top of the mountain, but nothing compares to that. Those like are some of my most interesting and fond memories of X Games, away from the contest, of like just getting up there, because you're taking a 20-minute gondola ride up there. And then it's like you get out of the gondola and it's like green lights towards the lodge, and the whole lodge up top is shut down for the monster party. And it's basically like wristband gets you free drinks, and so you're in there and getting free drinks, and there's always a musical act. And it's always like a surprise, and there's so many different rumors of who it's gonna be. Like, I think we started a Nickelback rumor one year that actually like kind of took off. But it was The Game one year, which I think was my favorite one. I waited at the bottom. We thought we were gonna miss it with Lyman Courier for, I don't know, like 45 minutes, because they were at capacity. We showed up a little late, and we sent his wife up with Evan McEachran, and we're waiting at the bottom. We're like, we're gonna miss the fucking game. And we got up there, and like, I don't know, it was super cool. There's been other ones. I think Machine Gun Kelly tried to climb into the rafters, got stuck, couldn't get down. They had to get a ladder out for him. There's been some great stories of the monster party.
Well, I heard one from someone, I think someone that's been working there a while, maybe like a comms person. They said that Ken Block drove his rally car up to the top, like up to the party one year.
It was parked right outside.
So sick.
I was up there for that one. But I mean, I think like all the fun of X Games in that sort of aspect, the last few years have been lacking, and COVID's a huge part of that. This year was fun. I went to the monster party. Thanks, Tom Wallish, for the wristband.
I didn't see you there.
You were there?
I was there, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was there. I was kind of hiding.
Were you in the monster party? Is a very funny scene, because it's like all the industry people, but then it's also like your Aspen regulars in like the music area.
See, the old monster party was less of that.
Like it was dudes that are like in their late 50s hanging out with like these 21-year-old girls.
There was some of that, but there was definitely less of that. But no, I was there again. Also, shout out Josh Bishop. I should have asked you for wristbands. I apologize for not asking you, for calling me out after that. But it's always a weird thing asking for a wristband when you're 34 years old to go to a monster party is a little awkward. But anyway, I went there and I sat in the back of like the party zone on the seats with big shout out Teresa Korobova, the surface skier. We just sat there and judge people walking by us, and there were some very interesting,
very old head move right there. Just in the corner of the party.
It was. Hey, I was getting drinks and sitting in the back, but there's a lot of observing going on, just the judge life.
Well, so that was my second monster party, and I didn't realize that the wristband gets you free drinks.
Oh no!
So we were going big this year. It was awesome. It was a great time. But so this is what I want to. I'm actually glad we're talking about this because I've wanted to give this inside scoop for a while. If anyone's a fan of skiing and you want to meet your favorite skier, just hang out at the Limelight during the week event.
Yeah.
Like this year I was working for the production company, so I was literally just driving people around and just organically ran into Henrik, ran into like all your favorite skiers. And they're just at the Limelight all the time. Yep. And so any normal person could walk in the lobby and just hang out there and meet all their favorite skiers that have ever lived.
I was a little bummed this year because in the past we've stayed at the Limelight. Yeah. It's been where they set the announcers up, and staying at the Limelight's nice. I mean,
I've seen some nice hotels, but it seems like everyone like dies over the Limelight.
The rooms are nice. They're not like I've stayed in better rooms.
Okay, yeah. It doesn't seem like that extravagant.
It's a nice hotel. It's not like, this is insane, but it's a nice hotel.
Yeah.
The benefit, I think, as like an announcer is when we would stay there, you go down, you have breakfast with everyone in the lobby, and you're with people who are competing. You can talk to them about the course. Yeah. You can get little inside scoops. You get to see more people.
Yeah.
And this year we were staying kind of across town in our own little condo. I think we were staying at the same place you stayed at.
Was it the Aspen Inn?
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
You were. I think I saw your van.
Did you?
Yeah.
In the park, parked in the.
The only reason I know that is because one of your Instagram posts while you were there
was waking up Ryan in the van.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I think that's like on the other side of the building from me.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so it was like condo style, major 70s architecture on the inside.
Yep.
Those are, I think, is that not the Aspen Inn?
No.
Excuse me, that's the one. Is that the one? That's the one at the base of the Buttermilk.
Yes,
that's the Aspen Inn.
Yeah, which I've stayed at too.
Yeah.
I would not suggest staying there.
I forget.
If you have any sort of like money at all, don't stay there.
Yeah. What is that place called that we were at? Oh, so you were in that same...
I think we were in the same building. And I remember messaging your Instagram story to Jason being like, I think they're staying like next door to me. I got sick at X Games, and one of the nights I was just passed out, and the people above me, so my lodging situation got a little goofed up this year.
Yeah.
And so my first 2 nights in Aspen, I'm staying with the 2 other announcers I'm working with for the live event, and we were supposed to be in a 3-bedroom condo with a loft. We were in a 2-bedroom condo with a living room.
Yeah, and so I had like that sliding, the accordion style door. Yep. Yeah,
and so I was like, all right, I'll sleep on the pull-out. I pulled the pull-out out. The sheets looked like they hadn't been washed in a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Put it back in, slept on the couch, and the people above me were really enjoying Aspen.
Yeah.
And so I did not sleep the first 2 nights. So I was gassed after the first day of announcing. Got a room switch, got my own room, and just passed out one of the nights. So I only went out the monster night. But did you figure out the name of it?
No, I couldn't. I'm having a tough internet connection down here in the basement studio.
Sorry. There is you can jump on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I was going on my phone, which hasn't connected yet.
I guess it doesn't really matter. But
you'll be able to find
Aspen Alps.
The Aspen Alps.
Yep.
Yes.
Very nice drivers from the airport. I know you drove in there, but like the people who work there were very friendly.
Yeah.
The
front desk people were great.
Lodging situation was not great for myself.
It literally looks like it hasn't been updated in like 40 years. Like it's it's straight out of like 70s, 80s.
Yep. Yeah. And we normally stay at either the Limelight or the Gant. And the Gant's kind of right next to it. The Gant's pretty cool. That's where the judges were this year. But yeah, now
this is what the best part about X Games is. In actuality, it's getting to pretend you're rich for a week.
Oh yeah,
that's it. Like me and my girlfriend, we went to the St. Regis for drinks one night. We went to the Little Nell for drinks.
Yep.
And you're paying like $20 per cocktail. But
it's
just
fun.
It's just great to sit in their lobby bar and just see. And it's so funny because you can't tell who's actually wealthy and who's just dressing up for Aspen. You know?
Yep. Well, and I think that is one of the things that if it does move, I'll miss. Like, I can't go to Aspen to pretend for a week that I belong here.
Yeah.
And
like, who cares about being rich in Big Bear?
Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I mean, like, all these people, and they're rich, and I'm walking around Aspen with them, but I'm jumping on the bus to go over to Buttermilk to announce. And,
instead of hopping in, whatever.
And make what I'm making
Rolls
to
Royce
talk
SUV.
about skiing. Yeah. But I mean, those experiences, like, I've been on the plane leaving Aspen and sat next to someone who's a multi-millionaire, become friends, exchange contact, and then we've met up years later in succession at X Games with his son and stuff, and I've gotten him into sponsor parties because, like, he wanted that experience, and my connection being some random ski dude got him, like, I'm a rich dude and come whatever, and this guy is like, why don't you come stay at my place sometime? And like, those sort of connections you won't get at Big Bear or whatever.
No,
and
totally.
Like, Aspen's special, and I think it always will be. So
it just gives us normal folks a chance.
I do hope it goes back.
I knowing nothing, think that it will be back.
I hope so.
Yeah, it just makes too much sense.
I know, like, meeting up with Jason, I think our last day there, and being like, is this our last time here for X Games?
What's that wing spot that you guys like at the end? Hometown or something?
Hometown barbecue has been so good to me over the years.
Yeah.
So one of our producers at X Games is a partial owner. And so one of the first years I announced X Games, I kind of was like, get us some food, bring it up.
Yeah.
And they turn it into like a segment where they bring us food while we're announcing at the venue.
Guys do like taste of the town in the booth. Yeah.
No, it's not even. It's like Pete eats and the other guy talks to him. So Brad will talk to me and I'm just eating and ignoring him.
Yeah.
And home team barbecue is my go-to.
Yeah.
I wasn't there last year because our daughter was born.
Yeah.
And during X Games, I was watching X Games in our hospital room, which I got permission.
Yeah.
My wife is a saint and let me tune in. But yeah, I even asked Jason to ship me home team barbecue, which he wouldn't do. So
yeah, I think you guys have talked about this on your podcast before, and you shouted out JoJo before. There still must be some sort of wing JoJo connection.
Have you not seen JoJo's Instagram where his life goal was to eat 40 wings?
It's like him in a Patriots jersey. I'm actually sad. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would love if the stars align. I could interview him at Spring Pass this year because he's up in Oregon.
Good luck. You may end up canceling JoJo before us, but
it's a race to see.
Yeah, we
listen. I got a little bit. I think getting close to 100 episodes. I have like a little bit more armor around me to like withstand.
But I don't think JoJo does. So we'll see. JoJo was pissed today when he saw that we had Micah on the podcast before him, not knowing who Micah is in the ski industry, and JoJo's pissed. But JoJo's JoJo.
I've heard a lot of very strong endorsements for him to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
From several people.
You've met Joey?
No, I've never met him before.
That even better. I feel like you should go in completely cold.
He was like, I was like, yo, you want to set up an interview? He's like, well, he said, first of all, in person would be better.
It would.
Yep. I agree. Yep. He's like, why don't you come over for some wine?
Yep.
We'll figure it out. And I think nothing's better than a drunk podcast.
I cannot wait to listen. Yeah, call me. I'll call in.
Yeah, we could do a call in.
No, for sure.
And I would love to do that. You guys have gotten... Yeah, I would love to be on for a Mount Rushmore.
I'm definitely our next one. You can come in.
Yeah, just let me know the topic.
I'll give you the topic ahead of time. You can prepare.
Oh my god, I love that concept. Yeah, there were the Giving Flowers episodes that Iberg and Phil Casaubon did. Because they were on Instagram Live, which has been like a huge hassle for editing the audio.
Oh, yeah.
But the call-in feature is great.
Yeah.
So whoever between the two of us can figure out how to get people like a radio show where people can call in, but it's still good audio.
Yeah. Oh, we were talking about doing that because I don't know. And our last episode, we recorded Micah and Noah on a phone call in because for some reason, Noah Curry, who is an aerospace engineer, cannot figure out how to make his computer do our video recording. Sorry, Noah. But it's been a bit of a struggle. So we've been doing some phone stuff. But
it's so great.
I would love to do, like you were saying, like a live show, like completely live, first time caller, long time listener. That sort of stuff would be fun.
It would be, but maybe you've seen it at a professional level. When I worked for NBC, I was on their NASCAR show, and like it was so great. I was just a studio runner. So I get to see like all the behind the scenes of like, what the teleprompter person's doing while they're working. And then the radio screener was great because they would be on the phone the entire show. Hey, what do you want to talk about? And then they would, write up what the person wants to talk about and then feed it to the front bench and be like, this person wants to talk about this subject. So you have 10 people in a queue.
And you just pick.
And then the producer's like, we're talking about this. Take the fourth person.
I like
and
it.
Then so it's a lot of moving. You basically need someone to screen everything.
It would be fun to have like a ski live radio show.
It would be great. You guys are closer to it than I am. I'm just one dude with a microphone and Zoom. You guys have like an actual show going.
We're just a few dudes and some very obscure opinions.
Yeah. Oh my god, dude! There's so much. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I love your guys' show.
Appreciate that. And I have enjoyed it because I got turned on to your stuff when Jason came on.
Yeah,
and then so it instantly went into my podcast thing, and like I was talking about, I mean, I just listen to podcasts. Like I don't listen to music at all when I'm driving anymore. So Jason was on for episode 92 or something like that, or maybe I can't remember. Early this year. Did you go retroactive to the past 4 years, or have you just been? I think I've just gone forward.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I creeped back to some, but like anyone that stood out.
Yeah.
But like I was mentioning, I have I do Pardon My Take.
Yeah.
I have Baseball is Dead, which is Jared Carabas, who used to be a Barstool personality. And I used to listen to podcasts a lot more driving for work.
Yeah.
But now I drive with my brother-in-law to work every day, so we're just shooting the shit, hanging out. So it's a lot less of my solo driving than it used to be. But yeah, I need to get back on it a little bit. Carabas is a great example because he did have some like sports. He's kind of been a sports insider for a while, but he's like a normal dude that's best friends with the dudes on the Red Sox. Yep.
So it's the same thing with what you're doing, what I'm doing. Like it's just building a platform and then being able to like talk to these guys about the inner workings of what's going. Like I think one of the funniest questions I've ever asked is asking Mac if he got dizzy when he's spinning, like when he has a 21.
Yeah.
Because that's, like, as a normal person, that's what you wonder.
For sure.
What the fuck's going on in your mind when you're spinning that much?
Well, and that too, like, talking about, like, a 2160 is, like, as an announcer, it's like, how the fuck am I supposed to explain this to somebody who's hanging out at home?
Yeah.
Like, the most spins they've ever seen is, like, a triple axel.
Yeah.
Like when figure skating comes on.
Yeah. Or they watch like some gymnastics and they kind of get like that sense of.
But they don't know what they're doing. They're like, it's like, wow, that was amazing. He landed good.
Well, Max seems like he didn't really know what he was doing either. He's like, I kind of just black out the second I leave the knuckle or leave the jump. And then that was it.
It's such an interesting like world we're in now with the spinning and not only that, like the bring back tricks and stuff. It's like how did we get here? I'm glad we're here, but it's an interesting place. I'm glad I don't judge anymore. I say that every time I announce. But I'm glad I don't have to judge anymore because this stuff is on a whole different level. Like when I was judging, it was like whose dub 12 had a better grab. Like it's not that hard. But it's pretty interesting.
Oh man. Yeah, this is interesting. Do you think that because you said that Jason's very judgy, like he judges skiing as much as you do.
He judges everything.
Everything
in life.
Do you have to be an asshole to be a judge?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. Jason is an asshole. And I'm probably an asshole adjacent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think to be a good judge, and it sucks. I think it's one of those things that never really leaves you if you stop judging.
Yeah.
Is tearing skiing apart nonstop. Mm-hmm. And I think with some of the trends in skiing in the last few years and not being perfect when you're doing things, very hard for me to watch and digest.
Yeah.
And understand why it's cool.
Yeah.
So
do you have an example of that? Something that you're having trouble understanding that's cool? Why it's cool?
Extra movement. Extra arm movement, extra flailing. Like
the kind of loose but lit mindset. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to get more specific, but that's perfect. Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that sort of stuff is like when I watch skiing now, it's gotten a little better because I can just watch it a little more. Yeah. But so much of it is I'm just critiquing all the time. But I guess
out loud or internally?
Internally.
Okay, yeah. Because I feel like as a commentator, you can't be.
Oh, I do. And that's
on the mic. You feel comfortable being super critical.
Yeah. Okay. And that's one thing. Like I've gotten some negative feedback.
Yeah.
From some pretty high up people in skiing.
Yeah. The skiers and the athletes?
Not the athletes.
Okay, the athlete adjacent people.
Some athletes have told me to be nicer.
Yeah.
I've gotten some agents bring up that I shouldn't be as critical.
Yeah.
But I've also gotten some feedback from people who I really respect saying that me being critical is more like, let's say, mainstream sports where like, I can shout out Josh Bishop and I were talking the other day.
Yeah.
And he mentioned how he appreciates the way I announce because I don't sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
Where if someone misses a grab, I say they missed a grab.
Yeah.
If somebody does something that doesn't look the way it should, I say that. And he brought up Formula One as an example where they're watching a race and somebody does something that's out of character or wrong and they talk about it. And I don't see why, as a commentator or announcer, if people are watching this and like, it's fine for me to explain remedially what something is, but it's also fine, in my opinion, to explain why something isn't as good as what someone else is. I don't have to be nice about everything to make everyone happy. Mm-hmm. I feel like if someone does something in baseball, football, that's a bad fumble in football, the announcer's going to call it out that was terrible, that they shouldn't have done that. If somebody in skiing does something that's just a completely out of character, and like it has to be noted, because if someone at home is watching and it's like, well, that didn't seem that bad. If the announcer doesn't tell them that that's bad and explain why that's bad,
then the scoring doesn't make sense.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And that's kind of, I don't know, that's my take on it.
Well, I think that there could be like a level of softness with the being critical, because they're doing stuff that's death-defying. Yeah, like, baseball. I love to rag on baseball because I think it's the most boring of the major sports, even though that probably kills you to hear that.
Yeah.
But it's like, they're hitting the ball with a stick, that they're not, even though like getting hit by a pitch could be life-threatening, it's not as obviously life-threatening as going off a big air jump.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're criticizing someone for missing a grab while fucking throwing themselves through the air, spinning
for sure,
like more than you can count. It's like, oh, well, why give them a hard time? But it's like I agree that as the commentator, you need to step into the world where it's like, yes, this is incredible, but we could still critique it and be like, amongst all this incredible shit that's going on, this wasn't as good as it could have been.
And I feel like Tom is a perfect person to do that, because he could do 90% of what's going on. Me, not as much. But Tom's very nice about people's runs. And that's just Tom as a person, though. I'm critical. Part of one of the reasons why I was a pretty good judge. But I don't know. I would rather talk about what is actually happening. It's no negative to the person themselves or the run.
Yeah.
They made a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, even if one of my best friends, let's say Aaron Blanc, in the middle of his run completely flails on a grab, I'm going to call it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it looks like he missed that grab.
Well, it's also respectful to the athlete too, because it's like, by you criticizing them, it's like you know that they can do better than what they just did.
Yeah.
You know, like they're capable of more.
Yeah. Well,
so
it's not like I'm like somebody flails on something and like they obviously made a mistake or caught an edge. I'm like, oh, what a fucking idiot! You suck. Like it's like, oh, obviously they caught an edge or whatever, or obviously their body position was off and they missed a grab and that's why they fell.
Yeah.
But I feel like those kind of things need to be explained. So in layman's terms, someone at home who is getting dizzy by watching these spins can see, oh, there's a difference. That's why that score is 10 points different than this one.
And also, it's on ABC. Like, these are people that are used, like, it's, late January, early February. Football's done.
Yeah.
Like, they want, like, this is on at the bar. And they're like, what the fuck's going on? And they want to be able to be like, this sucks, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be able to discern for them. Because to them, everything looks the same.
Yep.
It's like the same thing as, like, I don't know if you're into bull riding at all, but, like...
I'm not. That's
So, like, if I see that when that's on CBS, I'm interested because the commentator is, like, making sense of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it all looks impressive. But he's like, oh, this was bad for this reason. It makes the sport make sense to me in that moment.
Yep. That's a good example. I got into cricket recently. Actually, not recently, but I watch cricket, and the commentators are my only source of what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
So if they're telling me that this is bad or good, I have to believe everything they say because I don't know the sport. Like I like baseball. This is like baseball in other countries. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Do you believe in the commentator's jinx?
Oh, yeah.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
So could you explain that for people, at least how you understand it? Like in the instance where like you wouldn't... Okay, I'll say mine first because I'm not commentating.
Yeah.
So, like, if, last drop for someone at Big Air, and you're like, if they land this...
I'll say that.
Okay, you'll say that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's less of that, and I guess in our sport, it's less of that and more of, I won't talk previous injuries. Okay, I don't touch that.
Okay, yeah.
That sort of stuff scares me. I don't know. I've seen too many things.
Just talking about stuff going wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't touch any of that. I mean, I'll build something up. I'll build up the fact that if they land this trick at what score they could do it. I mean, but yeah, the announcer's curse of basically like setting something up where this guy, I mean, I'll use baseball. This guy hasn't struck out in this many games and blah, blah, blah. Or like baseball, if someone's throwing a perfect game.
Yes, thank you.
It happened. I was watching the Mariners the other night. Huge Mariners fan. Bryce Miller is throwing a perfect game through 6. And the announcer, Dave Sims, who's not my favorite announcer.
Yeah.
He's good, but he's not my favorite. He's got too many catchphrases he's trying to get hooked. But... He won't say the word perfect, but he'll say things like he's retired 16 batters in a row.
Yeah. Flawless.
Yep. So those type of things, because you don't want to jinx it, and so I don't know.
I do rag on baseball because it's. We can get into this. Baseball annoys me because for such a stats-heavy game, every venue's different. So it's like all these nerds that are super preoccupied.
That's what's so good about it, though.
All these nerds that are like, oh, but hit this, that, and the other stat. But every time you play, it's a completely different venue with completely different, But
that's the cool thing about it. Is it is different.
It's so.
I mean, the fields are all different, and like, I'm all for that. And you look at it, let's say in skiing.
Yeah.
Would you want a standardized slopestyle course?
That's a great point. No, I would not want that.
So going to a different ballpark and having, let's say, the Green Monster in Fenway, and you have this super short fence and left because of the structure, and it was built 100 years ago, but it's 40 feet tall.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool.
That is
and
cool.
I mean,
but if you have a player on the Red Sox, his stats are going to be different because he's playing at Fenway half the time.
True.
Yeah.
True. But that's just
part of it.
Part of the game. It's
far and away the dorkiest sport.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you look at guys in Colorado, and these guys who've hit a ton of home runs in Colorado and are trying to get in the Hall of Fame, and these journalists who are voting on it. Well, the altitude, though.
Yeah.
You got to take the altitude into effect.
Yeah.
Even though it's one of the biggest ballparks in all of baseball,
yeah,
it's still, the ball flies better.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning went to the Broncos because he couldn't throw the ball as well in the altitude. And like stuff like that is...
Well, every this is kind of different, but every single talent, that's kind of generally what the industry term is for Varsity Pete over here. Anyone on the mic,
I do love that term. Yeah. Every time I see it, I'm like, I am talented. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I am talented. So they all say that anyone that does multiple sports, they all say that baseball's their favorite because you have all that time to draw out stories and all that stuff. Do you wish that you were involved with that at all?
So for sure. Yeah. So Jimmy Coleman, who is the play-by-play or host for X Games, him and I talk daily about how we wish we could be like minor league baseball announcers. Yeah. Because I mean, I love that. I love that 9 innings of sitting and talking about someone and all the information that you have at hand about them and their story and what can go on in the game. It's I don't know. There's so much more to talk about.
Well, so that's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because at least what I've seen with football, because that's the sport I've interacted with the most, they have these these cards that have every single stat, all this information that you could want to know. Do you bring that into skiing at all?
So we have, depending on the contest, so like X Games, for example, there's a research department. Yeah. And so we get bios on every athlete. And so we'll have all that stuff. So when you're commentating, just to be clear, do you have a sheet in front of you? So when someone's dropping, you're like, they're from this place. They're okay. Yeah. So for every,
so you're not just super knowledgeable. You have all this in front of you.
So let's step back. Before the last shrug. 4 years, I knew pretty much everybody who was in the contest well. Yeah. And their background and everything. The last 4 years, I've used those research papers a little bit more. Yeah. And they are a good resource, and it's great to have it. But for every contest, we get a packet, and it's start list. You get the show rundown, and then you have bios on everybody. Yeah. And it'll change. If we're doing 4 contests in a day at X Games, the packet will go away. A new packet will come back for the next contest. So we'll change for Knuckle Huck and that sort of thing. And I'll refer to those. I think the play-by-play or the host will do a little bit more of that because they're going to do more show intro. They're going to do more of that kind of background because they're going to intro the writer before they drop and then get tossed to me, and I'm talking about what they're doing. And generally, 90% of the time, I know the people, what they're doing, but yeah. Yeah.
Did it rub you the wrong way at all when you're like, fuck, I didn't get hired for Dutour, and then you tune in and Tanner is literally on air but off the mic because he's eating an Uncrustable?
Apparently he ate that whole box.
I know, we posted that.
Okay, yeah, Jason was texting me, he's like, I think he's gonna eat the whole box.
He's going for it.
No, not at all. Whenever it's people who anybody, it's not, this isn't a competition to try to get these jobs. I would like to do them because I enjoy going to these events. I really love talking about skiing. It's my favorite thing to do. And I like calling runs. I like calling tricks. I like calling runs. I like talking about them. I have a pretty solid knowledge of the judging booth. So I feel like I'm a good resource as an announcer to tell the people what the judges are going through as well, because I've spent so many years in there. I understand how the system works. I understand kind of what the judges have to do to come to their conclusion. But when it comes to Tanner at Dutour, I was so entertained by having him back involved in contest skiing to that level, and contest having him involved after not being involved and knowing what he's done on his lives and knowing how opinionated Tanner is and getting him in a position where he has to be PC to a point.
Yeah.
And with Tom, who is so trained and like NBC trained, X Games trained, he's like all this stuff. Tom is minding his P's and Q's. Yeah. He knows how to do this. He knows the structure.
Yeah.
And then having Tanner next to him calling people Tuckleberry Finn and all this stuff. I mean,
he had one more that was so good.
He did.
I can't remember it. It was so funny though. Oh my God. I wish I could remember. But he had another, yeah.
Then it was, on that same note, it was cool to see Devin Logan, who has been doing more announcing. So Devin came out to the Copper Grand Prix this year and did the venue announcing. So I did venue for the first couple days, and then I went into the outside TV booth, and Devin came in and filled in my spot and called to the venue. And she's great for that. I mean, Devin is another one of those people, and probably why we're good friends, and she's been friends with the whole Good Enough crew, is Devin's no bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to tell it how it is. She's going to give you her opinion. And yeah, I mean, Devin's great.
Yeah.
So
my favorite of all of them is Chris Cote.
Yeah.
Chris has this ability to basically go up there and all he's saying is, "Oh yeah, fuck yeah, Detour sick."
Yeah.
And somehow he has the job every single year, and it's super entertaining. But that's really, at the end of the day, all that he's saying.
Oh yeah,
he's like, this is so cool.
Yeah, his little interviews over the last few years at the bottom of Detour, where people are like not trying to talk to him at all, and he's like, "So how's this going?" Yeah. All right, cool.
Right on. 20 years of Detour.
All right, 20 years of Detour. Back to you, Tom and Tanner.
He's got a great gig, dude.
Him and my favorite personal sideline reporter I've worked with, and in the booth, because I've worked with him in the booth as well, as DC.
Yeah,
Jonathan Ogden.
Yeah.
So DC he's probably for someone who's not a skier, who doesn't really have a competitive background. I've never met someone who's more of a student of the game. When I was judging, DC would be in he'd be in the ski booth with us, learning tricks, knowing what's going on, knowing who's up and coming, writing things down. He knows skiing as good as anybody else. Like, he could call skiing as good as any other ski announcer.
Yeah.
And for a dude who just snowboards and just is a fan and it's his job, he's awesome. He's one of the best to do it.
Yeah. Is there anything with... I don't want to overshare. Basically, I've seen before with, like, at work where talent will have like a difficult relationship with one another. Is there any sort of personality or like a quirk that people have when you're working with them that just makes it difficult to do your job? Like, I've found, for example, like when I'm interviewing people, and I notice this with other interviewers, rather than asking a question then providing like a variety of options, ask your question and then shut up.
Yeah.
Like, that's something I've noticed with what I'm doing. So have you noticed anything like that with your job?
Not specifically.
Uh-huh.
There have been some people I've worked with in the past where it took a few days for us to mesh a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe different generations, I think it's more of like energy level. Like, so when you're announcing with someone, it's like, it's really hard not to try to match someone's energy level. Yeah. And when somebody is like full on like monster truck, like, and welcome to the X Games, and sorry, Brad. It, like, my first couple years working with Brad J, who longtime venue live announcer for the X Games, that's just who he is. I mean, he's MC, loud, monster truck, gravelly voice kind of dude. And I am not. And I am a nerd. And I'm like, I just want to talk about the tricks. And the rest of the time, I just want to make fun of you. And so there was I'd say my first year working with Brad, there was definitely like a weird balance of me deciding if I try to go up to his level or if I stay where I'm at. And then also my sarcasm not meshing with him. But I'd say that's mainly like been kind of my thing. I mean, I've worked with some like sideline type.
So how did you resolve that issue? Like, did you just decide
just continue to make fun of him nonstop?
Just stay yourself and then be
like on and off air, continue to make fun of him until we were boys.
Yeah.
And then we can make fun of each other back and forth.
Yeah.
But it's or he understood that I'm just an asshole punk kid that's going to continue to make fun of him.
Yeah.
And he just has to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like this year, I mean, we had like a whole time frame that we were just killing time where I literally just made fun of him the entire time, and he's just cool with it now. But the first year it was kind of like I get these looks and I'm like, yeah, I'm making fun of you. like yeah, you're old.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's just, I think on a professional level it's just kind of hard to say, I guess. It's just more of like just finding a balance with people and less of like, oh, I can't work with that person.
Yeah. And you're paired up with them anyways.
And I hope to other people, I'm pretty easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not in there like I need my papers here now and, oh, the event's not starting, I'm walking off. Like, no, I'm just there.
Yeah.
And, like, I'll go get my own tea. Like, I don't need my PA to go get stuff for me. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
That's been my only thing that I've really struggled with, I'd say, in the past, is just managing the balance with the person I'm working with. So
and you saw that's why the Tanner Tom dynamic was so funny, because Tom is this media trained guy putting on a show. And Tanner's there giving his sincere reactions to everything going on.
Oh, yeah.
I question whether or not he knows that Huckleberry Finn is actually called Huckleberry, or he thinks that Huckleberry Finn's name is actually Tuckleberry.
Yeah,
he thinks that it's actually Tuckleberry, and then Tucker is just close enough to Tuckleberry. I wasn't sure that he actually knew that it was Huckleberry instead.
Knowing Tanner, that just tangent just went off in his brain and he just stuck there. But no, it's what for our generation to have Tanner in an announcing booth,
it's the best.
It's just one of those like, yeah, this could be good, and to have him with like one of the most recognizable names in Tom Wallish, who has been in the booth and is trained, and to put those two together, this wild card, this like giant in media and everything Tom is together, and say, good luck, here's a box of Uncrustables, was awesome.
It's like, if you're going to draw a sports comparison, it's like putting Dennis Rodman in the booth.
Yeah.
Because, of course, he's one of the best in the game. Most, best rebounds of all time. So it's like, of course, he knows what he's talking about. And he knows what he's talking about, but he's a fucking loose cannon.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great comparison. Yeah, I mean, that's perfect.
It's so good.
I couldn't find a better one.
I mean, he might put you out of a job, but
I mean, if that's the case, that's fine. Yeah. It's one of those. Like,
would you go back to judging if Tanner takes up all your commentating roles?
Judging's tough. Judging wore on me a lot. I took judging probably too personal.
Yeah.
And in the sense where if my opinion wasn't the one that was voted on by the rest of the group, I took it personal that we fucked up. And not even necessarily that all the time, like rewatching something and seeing like a mistake or something is like things still haunt me.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't able to disconnect enough and take it as like, this is a job, I'm doing this the best I can, move on. Like, I would be too hung up on contests. Like, I can still think of specific examples where I'm just like, oof, we might have fucked that up.
Yeah.
And it's tough.
And you've said that before on your show about Woodsy reffing Slushed, where it's like, it looks like this guy's in pain.
Well, and it's funny because Woodsy, I mean, I love Woodsy for the fact that, like, back when Woodsy was competing, he showed up to every athlete coaches meeting, everything, and would have opinions, would have questions. And that's not a thing anymore. I think we've talked about that on ours, where like coaches show up, country representatives show up. It's not a thing where people come ask questions. And I think Jason has tried to make it more of an option now, but I vividly remember Woodsy showing up to every single one. He'd have a question about the course. He'd have a question specifically for us and what we were looking at, and so on and so forth. And Woodsy was very gracious about pretty much every single judging decision ever, except for one probably.
Yeah.
And it is interesting to see the way he feels about his reffing now. Yeah. And knowing he has to make those decisions. And I wonder if he looks back at all, because I can specifically think of Oslo X Games. Woodsy did switch trip 14. Mm-hmm. He did switch trip 14 Rip to Dank, so half of Octo. Mm-hmm. Shout out Tom and Steve for Rip to Dank. People need to bring Rip to Dank back. But anyway, so front hand of the Octo grab, his left hand was floating near the back of his skis. As judges, we looked at him reaching towards that ski as him missing that Octo grab. Although he had one of them, looked like he was reaching for that grab.
So the intention was what?
The intention was there, in our opinion, and that he missed the grab. It was very, very highly contested after that by him that he did do the grab. He wasn't going for that. In our opinion, he didn't make finals, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I remember having to go to that meeting and how contested that was in our judging booth. And so it's interesting now with a role reversal for him, and how, I mean, it's hard. It's hard in that aspect where he gets 5-10 minutes to decide if someone does it. Imagine having 30 seconds where the show must go on. I mean, even less. You look at, people can be so critical of X Games Big Air. They have maybe 10 seconds to decide where that ranks, and they don't get a full 100 points to even decide that.
Yeah.
They get 15. So they're tying people and hoping it goes in the right spot. It's the most wrong system we have in this whole thing. We've talked about it before, and I think that's one of those things. I wrote a whole post after X Games like 2020 on New Scores, probably the last time I posted on New Scores, and probably like 6 years before that, about how it actually works and what they do. And it was interesting how well it was received, but there's, like, you expect these 5 people, sometimes 3 people judging these contests, sometimes 10 people, to always get it right. There's not a lot of time. They're not going to get it right every time, but I promise you they're going to put every intention in trying to get it right. There's no ill intention in getting it wrong. They're trying to get it right. Yeah. But it's a discretionary sport. I mean, it's not always going to be right.
And these are people that love the sport, that participate in the sport, that still participate in the sport.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's an inaccurate perception that formerly ESPN used to just send some 3 corporate guys in there. Like, you have to really be a dumbass to think that that's how it works.
But those are the comments. Those are the comments you see on Instagram and stuff. Is like, oh, the judges, blah blah blah.
They don't even ski. They don't know what's going on.
The judges are Jason Aarons. The judges are Remco Kaiser.
Yeah.
They're Noah Curry. They're all these names that people actually know in skiing. Nikki Blackhall. Yeah. Like the formerly competitive skiers who are in there, not even formerly competitive. You have Dane Kirk. You have these film skiers who just love the sport. Yeah. Tucker Fitzsimons. People who want to be involved and help their opinion. And that's kind of how I got involved, where locally a friend of mine asked, hey, can you help judge this series since you're not competing and you're in college? I was like, oh yeah, sure. And then I had to do a clinic And the clinic was taught by a snowboarder for skiing, and I basically corrected him the whole time. Dude says, "Why didn't you come judge USASA Nationals? You know a lot about skiing." And that's where I met Steele and Ian Meter and these guys. And they're like, "You should come do a real clinic." And I went and did a clinic and got a pretty high test score. And they're like, "Hey, you're judging the Grand Prix at Copper, Dew Tour, X Games, Dew Tour, all these events my first year." And I was like, "What?" Like, my first event I judged was half pipe at Copper, and I'd never judged a half pipe contest in my life. Never once. I watched a ton of them, but I'd never judged one. And I remember being in the athlete meeting. They have the judges up there, and they're like, "These are our judges." Introduced us, and I remember Dumont, I'm standing like probably 5 feet. Dumont goes up to Steele. "Who the fuck's the kid with the mustache?" Because I had like handlebar mustache. And Steele's like, "Oh, that's Pete. He's great." He's like, "Hey, fucking kid." Okay. Thanks, Simon.
So angry.
Oh,
For no reason.
Simon's great. I mean, and I went and judged Simon's contest out in Maine, Sunday River a couple times. And Simon is awesome. Great. I wish Simon was still in. I loved Simon's podcast. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to it at all.
Of course.
Very entertained by that. I was bummed to see it not continue.
The Simon Dumont show.
Yeah.
The topic was him.
Yep. And I loved how many times he said, "I digress." But Simon's great for skiing when he wants to be involved in it.
Yeah.
And I miss having him around.
Yeah.
But
all right, let's round this out.
okay.
I'll do some viewer questions, style questions. If you guys plan to have people on, who's your dream guest for Good Enough?
Current or like?
Yeah, just like if you're like, I would love to interview this person.
Man.
Who would you want to have on?
I might get some hate for this. I don't know. Eileen.
Oh, I know. Me too.
Yeah, Eileen probably would be.
But I would honestly, I want Eileen in 20 years talking about everything that's going on now.
Yeah.
I don't think that anyone that's that deeply involved with China in the moment is going to be able to speak freely. I
want Eileen, and I want to attempt to break her from her like structured interview format.
Media trained.
It's something. I would say that, and then. Oh, that's a tough one. I would love to have. I'd love to have the Phils on. I'd love to talk to the Phils.
All three of them.
Yeah.
Same time.
I know Bellon and LaRose pretty well from judging.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool to have them on. And God, this is a tough one.
I gotta say,
there's so many people.
I just went through and edited the Giving Flowers, just like recorded episode like 22 or 23 with Phil Bellinger is one of the best ones. Like I had no clue how instrumental he was to the development of the sport, and still is like super involved. Yeah.
And if anybody doesn't know, like, I mean, look up the Phils. Yeah. And one of the this is back to judging and stuff, but one of the hardest things when I first started judging was I was judging with Phil and all these dudes that I really respected in skiing, and very often I'd have a different opinion from them, and I'd have to tell them they were wrong. Yeah. And to tell these idols that I grew up with that I thought that their opinion was wrong it wasn't hard in the moment, but like that's one of those things afterwards where I was like, man, that was rough. Yeah. Like I vividly remember at X Games one year telling Phil LaRose that his opinion was wrong and he didn't agree with me, and I was like, well, it is. Yeah. And so those sort of things are but the Phils and probably Brogan. Oh, that'd be a great one. Yeah. I'd like to have Brogan on. Yeah. Just to get Brogan's opinion on what life and everything, and how people still idolize him even though he has no connection really with the sport anymore. You know, it would be an interesting one, kind of the same essence, would be Clayton Villa. He never does any interviews. Well, he doesn't. Yeah. He's still in touch with skiing. He is, but you never hear him talking about Clayton skiing. Or I mean, we're on the stepped kick, but Charlie Owens would be another one that would be pretty interesting.
Those two have been on my list for a long time.
I was in Mexico 2 years ago for my wife's birthday, and I'm in customs walking through the line, and I'm staring at this guy in front of me. I'm just like, I know this person.
Yeah.
It's probably like 40 feet away. And I took a picture and zoomed in and sent it to Jason. I was like, is this Jones? He's like, why are you taking creeper photos of Charlie? I was like, we're in customs. I don't know. And then walking down the road when we were in Mexico, I get accosted by Sean Jordan with a case of beer over his shoulder. And he's like, come on over. Yeah. It was Campbell's bachelor party.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so they're all down there staying right next to me and my wife.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, just random skiing. I see Shawnee J random places. It just happens.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just at Palisades the other day, and we were eating at that 22 bar restaurant type thing that's right at the base. And this dude from the neighboring restaurant comes in, and he's talking to the executive chef or the owner of the place, whatever, grabbing some keys. Look at the bartender. I'm like, is that Garrett Russell right there?
Yeah, G-Funk.
Yeah, G-Funk works at the slot.
Yep, I used to work with my wife. Yeah. Let me run up and say goodnight to my daughter real quick.
All right.
Sorry, I leave for the weekend, so I won't see my daughter till Monday.
That's good.
I'm announcing in Phoenix this weekend.
Really?
Uh-huh.
What's going on in Phoenix?
Electric skateboard racing.
Okay.
Yep. I have no idea how I got roped into it, but it's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got a random Instagram DM, and I'm announcing electric skateboard racing.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick.
All right. So this was a very popular viewer question that we did for a long time. Do you have any hot takes about skiing?
I dropped one on our other our Good Enough podcast the other day that I'll revisit, and then maybe I'll go to another one. I'm tired of competitive skiers being on cambered rockered skis. They need to be on cambered skis. I'm tired of washed out landings, especially in the younger generation of skiers. If you're competing in slopestyle half pipe, you need to be on cambered skis. You're going to land cleaner. You're going to be able to ski better. I know that your favorite skiers, Henrik and other people, have these early rockered, early rise skis, but it's not working for you. You need cambered skis.
Yeah.
So
what do you think of the style of skiing where they wash it out but make it look intentional and maybe add like a 360 revert? Do you know those used car lots with the balloon guys? Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty much what I'm seeing. I think sometimes if done, and let me step back. Some of my own skiing in the past has had random shit like that where I'm like, yeah, I did that on purpose. That was sick. And now watching some of the other stuff, I'm like, I like clean skiing.
Just keep it bolts, yeah.
Yeah. I'm from the school of watching Wallish, and some of my favorite skiers to watch ski obviously were Wallish and Gus and these guys who there's intention when they land. There's intention to put the skis parallel downhill and land clean or on edge. Jossie's another one. Christian Nubedal, a Norwegian skier who recently stopped competing.
Yeah.
The way he would land, that sort of stuff, and maybe I just like contest skiing.
Old head.
I love watching edits, but if I'm watching edits and I appreciate clean landings, I understand that there's other aspects and avenues of people being loose, and that's fine. I think some of my favorite snowboarding is loose. I don't know why it doesn't translate to my favorite skiing. I mean, one of my favorite snowboarders is Jonas Michelot, who is one of the loosest snowboarders in the old Videograss movies, and for some reason it just doesn't translate for skiing for me. I don't know.
Super weird.
But I'm just gonna that's probably my only hot take. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
You leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I'm gonna do one more. I'm tired of 16s in the pipe with shitty ass Cindy slip back safety grabs. I don't care who it is, whether it's Ferreira, whether it's Nico, whoever. I'm tired of it. I hate watching it. It's not cool. Like, I want other things. Like, quit doing 16s with shitty safety grabs. There's my hot take.
Yeah, there we go. So. And last one, because I always like to encourage people to pursue other avenues of being involved in skiing without being a pro skier. Would you encourage people to try to become a commentator?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
mean, you think it's a viable career path? I
would encourage people more off to pursue judging. Okay. I would say first and foremost, if you have a strong opinion on skiing and you're a student of the game or a nerd or whatever you want to call it, pursue judging. I mean, I know multiple judges who never have done, and you talk about these sports like if you've never done it, how can you judge it or whatever? But there are people who can watch things more finite that have never done these tricks than any of the athletes who've actually done them. I mean, the amount of athletes that we've had come into the booth who can actually handle judging a contest are very few. So I would definitely tell people to go to a clinic, hit Jason up, start judging.
Fall, yeah.
And I mean, if somebody wants to get into commentating skiing, I mean, my path was pretty obscure, but I know there's local contests. I know that a majority of those local contests, there's not someone with a mic. Go get yourself one of those big JBL speakers and a mic and go commentate a setup. If your buddies are in the contest and nobody's an MC, go do it. I mean, I've done multiple local rail jams where they just have a mic and need someone on it, and they're so fun. I mean, half the time you're just making fun of your friends who are skiing in it, but that's an avenue where you can say, I've announced this, and get into it and see what happens. Cool. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, there we have it. Where can people find Good Enough Podcast?
So hit up, our Instagram at GoodEnoughBGK, and the links are in our bio. We're at we're the Good Enough Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Nobody's ever asked me this, so this is...
Yeah, you're trying to run through it.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're on Spotify and Apple, and we're trying to put up more content as we go, trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do in the summer.
Yeah.
If we start interviewing people or what we're going to do. So, go check it out.
Cool. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for having me in your house. Thank you for the Coors Light. Thank you for everything.
No, thanks for stopping by. This has been fun. I mean, as you can tell, I can just continue to talk about skiing. So it's pretty fun.
All right. And thank you to anyone that listened. We're at nearly 3 hours of recording. So we're going to let...
Jason will be losing it right now.
We're going to let Pete get back to his baby and his real life. And that's it.